Exodus. Chapter 1. These are the names of the Israelites who went with Jacob to Egypt. Each of them went with his family: Reuben, Simeon, Levi and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun and Benjamin, Dan and Naphtali, Gad and Asher. In all, the descendants of Jacob numbered 70 persons. Joseph was in Egypt already. Then Joseph died, and his brothers, and all that generation. But the Israelites were fruitful and prolific. They became so numerous and powerful that eventually the whole land was full of them. Then there came to power in Egypt a new king who had never heard of Joseph. "Look," he said to his people, "the Israelites are now more numerous and stronger than we are. We must take precautions to stop them from increasing any further, or if war should break out, they might join the ranks of our enemies. They might take arms against us and then escape from the country." Accordingly, they put taskmasters over the Israelites to wear them down by forced labor. In this way they built the store cities of Pithom and Ramesses for Pharaoh. But the harder their lives were made, the more they increased and spread, until people came to fear the Israelites. So the Egyptians gave them no mercy in the demands they made, making their lives miserable with hard labor, with digging clay, making bricks, doing various kinds of field work, all sorts of labor that they imposed on them without mercy. The king of Egypt then spoke to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was called Shiphrah, and the other Puah. "When you attend Hebrew women in childbirth," he said, "look at the 2 stones. If it is a boy, kill him. If a girl, let her live." But the midwives were God-fearing women and did not obey the orders of the king of Egypt, but allowed the boys to live. So the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and said to them, "What do you mean by allowing the boys to live?" The midwives said to Pharaoh, "Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They are hardy and give birth before the midwife can get to them." For this, God was good to the midwives, and the people went on increasing and growing more powerful. And since the midwives feared God, he gave them families of their own. Pharaoh then gave all his people this command: "Throw every newborn boy into the river, but let all the girls live." Exodus. Chapter 2. There was a man descended from Levi who had taken a woman of Levi as his wife. She conceived and gave birth to a son, and, seeing what a fine child he was, she kept him hidden for 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him. Coating it with bitumen and pitch, she put the child inside and laid it among the reeds at the river's edge. His sister took up position some distance away to see what would happen to him. Now Pharaoh's daughter went down to bathe in the river, while her maids walked along the riverside. Among the reeds she noticed the basket, and she sent her maid to fetch it. She opened it and saw the child. The baby was crying. Feeling sorry for it, she said, "This is one of the little Hebrews." The child's sister then said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and find you a nurse among the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?" "Yes," said Pharaoh's daughter. And the girl went and called the child's own mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away and nurse it for me. I shall pay you myself for doing so." So the woman took the child away and nursed it. When the child grew up, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, who treated him like a son. She named him Moses because, she said, "I drew him out of the water." It happened one day, when Moses was grown up, that he went to see his kinsmen. While he was watching their forced labor, he also saw an Egyptian striking a Hebrew, one of his kinsmen. Looking this way and that and seeing no one in sight, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. On the following day he came back, and there were 2 Hebrews fighting. He said to the man who was in the wrong, "What do you mean by hitting your kinsman? And who appointed you," the man retorted, "to be prince over us and judge? Do you intend to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Moses was frightened. Clearly that business has come to light, he thought. When Pharaoh heard of the matter, he tried to put Moses to death, but Moses fled from Pharaoh. He went into Midianite territory and sat down beside a well. Now there was a priest of Midian with 7 daughters. They used to come to draw water and fill the troughs to water their father's flock. Some shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses sprang to their help and watered their flock. When they returned to their father Reuel, he said to them, "Why are you back so early today?" "An Egyptian protected us from the shepherds," they said, "and he even drew water for us and watered the flock." "And where is he?" he asked his daughters. "Why did you leave the man there? Ask him to eat with us." Moses agreed to stay on there with the man, who gave him his daughter Zipporah in marriage. She gave birth to a son, whom he named Gershom because, he said, "I am an alien in a foreign land." During this long period the king of Egypt died. The Israelites, groaning in their slavery, cried out for help, and from the depths of their slavery their cry came up to God. God heard their groaning. God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God saw the Israelites and took note. Exodus chapter 3. Moses was looking after the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led it to the far side of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. The angel of Yahweh appeared to him in a flame blazing from the middle of a bush. Moses looked. There was the bush blazing, but the bush was not being burnt up. Moses said, "I must go across and see this strange sight, and why the bush is not being burnt up." When Yahweh saw him going across to look, God called to him from the middle of the bush. "Moses, Moses," he said. "Here I am," he answered. "Come no nearer," he said. "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." "I am the God of your ancestors," he said, "the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." At this Moses covered his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Yahweh then said, "I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying for help on account of their taskmasters. Yes, I am well aware of their sufferings, and I have come down to rescue them from the clutches of the Egyptians and bring them up out of that country, to a country rich and broad, to a country flowing with milk and honey, to the home of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Yes, indeed, the Israelites' cry for help has reached me, and I have also seen the cruel way in which the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now I am sending you to Pharaoh, for you to bring my people the Israelites out of Egypt." Moses said to God, "Who am I to go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" "I shall be with you," God said, "and this is the sign by which you will know that I was the one who sent you. After you have led the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain." Moses then said to God, "Look, if I go to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your ancestors has sent me to you,' and they say to me, 'What is his name?' what am I to tell them?" God said to Moses, "I am he who is." And he said, "This is what you are to say to the Israelites, 'I am has sent me to you.'" God further said to Moses, "You are to tell the Israelites, 'Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name for all time, and thus I am to be invoked for all generations to come. Go, gather the elders of Israel together and tell them, 'Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, has appeared to me, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob, and has indeed visited you and seen what is being done to you in Egypt, and has said, I shall bring you out of the misery of Egypt to the country of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, to a country flowing with milk and honey. They will listen to your words, and you and the elders of Israel are to go to the king of Egypt and say to him, Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, has encountered us. So now please allow us to make a 3 days' journey into the desert and sacrifice to Yahweh our God. I am well aware that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless he is compelled by a mighty hand. He will not let you go until I have stretched out my arm and struck Egypt with all the wonders I intend to work there. I shall ensure that the Egyptians are so much impressed with this people that when you go, you will not go empty-handed. Every woman will ask her neighbor and the woman staying in her house for silver and golden jewelry and clothing. In these you will dress your own sons and daughters, despoiling the Egyptians of them. Exodus chapter 4. Moses replied as follows, "But suppose they will not believe me or listen to my words, and say to me, 'Yahweh has not appeared to you?'" Yahweh then said, "What is that in your hand?" "A staff," he said. "Throw it on the ground," said Yahweh. Moses threw it on the ground. The staff turned into a snake and Moses recoiled from it. Yahweh then said to Moses, "Reach out your hand and catch it by the tail." He reached out his hand, caught it, and in his hand it turned back into a staff. Thus they may believe that Yahweh, the God of their ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. Next, Yahweh said to him, "Put your hand inside your tunic." He put his hand inside his tunic, then drew it out again, and his hand was diseased, white as snow. Yahweh then said, "Put your hand back inside your tunic." He put his hand back inside his tunic, and when he drew it out, there it was restored, just like the rest of his flesh. Even so, should they not believe you nor be convinced by the first sign, the second sign will convince them. But should they not be convinced by either of these two signs and refuse to listen to what you say, you are to take some water from the river and pour it on the ground, and the water you have taken from the river will turn to blood on the dry land. Moses said to Yahweh, "Please, my Lord, I have never been eloquent, even since you have spoken to your servant, for I am slow and hesitant of speech. Who gave a person a mouth?" Yahweh said to him, "Who makes a person dumb or deaf, gives sight or makes blind? Is it not I, Yahweh? Now go, I shall help you speak and instruct you what to say." "Please, my Lord," Moses replied, "send anyone you decide to send." At this, Yahweh's anger kindled against Moses, and he said to him, "There is your brother Aaron the Levite, is there not? I know that he is a good speaker. Here he comes to meet you. When he sees you, his heart will be full of joy. You will speak to him and tell him what message to give. I shall help you speak, and him too, and instruct you what to do. He will speak to the people in your place. He will be your mouthpiece, and you will be as the God inspiring him. And take this staff in your hand. With this you will perform the signs." Moses went back to his father-in-law Jethro and said to him, "Give me leave to return to my kinsmen in Egypt and see if they are still alive." And Jethro said to Moses, "Go in peace." Yahweh said to Moses in Midian, "Go, return to Egypt, for all those who wanted to kill you are dead." So Moses took his wife and his son and, putting them on a donkey, started back for Egypt, and Moses took the staff of God in his hand. Yahweh said to Moses, "Think of the wonders I have given you power to perform. Once you are back in Egypt, you are to perform them before Pharaoh, but I myself shall make him obstinate, and he will not let the people go. You will then say to Pharaoh, 'This is what Yahweh says, Israel is my firstborn son. I told you, let my son go and worship me, but since you refuse to let him go, well then, I shall put your firstborn son to death.'" On the journey, when he had halted for the night, Yahweh encountered him and tried to kill him. Then Zipporah, taking up a flint, cut off her son's foreskin and with it touched his feet and said, "You are my blood bridegroom." So he let him go. She said, "blood bridegroom" then, with reference to the circumcision. Yahweh said to Aaron, "Go into the desert to meet Moses." So he went, and met him at the mountain of God and kissed him. Moses then told Aaron all that Yahweh had said when sending him and all the signs he had ordered him to perform. Moses and Aaron then went and gathered all the elders of the Israelites together, and Aaron repeated everything that Yahweh had said to Moses, and in the sight of the people performed the signs. The people were convinced, And they rejoiced that Yahweh had visited the Israelites and seen their misery, and they bowed to the ground in worship. Exodus chapter 5. After this, Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said to him, "This is what Yahweh, God of Israel, says, Let my people go, so that they can hold a feast in my honor in the desert." "Who is Yahweh?" Pharaoh replied, "for me to obey what he says and let Israel go? I know nothing of Yahweh, and I will not let Israel go." "The God of the Hebrews has encountered us," they replied. "Give us leave to make a 3 days' journey into the desert and sacrifice to Yahweh our God, or he will strike us with a plague or with a sword." The king of Egypt said to them, Moses and Aaron, "What do you mean by distracting the people from their work? Get back to your forced labor." And Pharaoh said, "Now that the people have grown to such numbers in the country, what do you mean by interrupting their forced labor?" That very day, Pharaoh gave the order to the people's taskmasters and their scribes, "Do not go on providing the people with straw for brickmaking as before. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. But you will exact the same quantity of bricks from them as before, not reducing it at all, since they are lazy, and that is why their cry is, 'Let us go and sacrifice to our God.' Give these people more work to do, and see they do it instead of listening to lying speeches." The people's taskmasters and scribes went out to speak to the people and said, "Pharaoh says this, I shall not provide you with any more straw. Go and collect straw for yourselves where you can find it. But your output is not to be any less." So the people scattered all over Egypt to gather stubble for their straw. The taskmasters harassed them. "You must complete your daily quota," they said, just as when the straw was there. And the Israelites' foremen whom Pharaoh's taskmasters had put in charge of them were flogged and asked, "Why have you not fulfilled your quota of bricks made today as before?" The Israelites' foremen went and appealed to Pharaoh. "Why do you treat your servants like this?" they said. "No straw is provided for your servants, yet still the cry is, 'Make bricks,' and now your servants are being flogged." "You are lazy, lazy," he retorted. "That is why you say, 'Let us go and sacrifice to Yahweh.' Get back to your work at once. You will not be provided with straw. All the same, you will deliver the quota of bricks." The Israelites' foremen saw they were in a difficult position on being told, "You will not reduce your daily production of bricks." As they left Pharaoh's presence, they met Moses and Aaron who were standing in their way. "May Yahweh look down at you and judge," they said to them. "You have brought us into bad odor with Pharaoh and his officials. You have put a sword into their hand to kill us." Moses went back to Yahweh and said, "Lord, why do you treat this people so harshly? Why did you send me? Ever since I came to Pharaoh and spoke to him in your name, he has ill-treated this people, and you have done nothing at all about rescuing your people." Exodus chapter 6. Yahweh then said to Moses, "Now you will see what I am going to do to Pharaoh. A mighty hand will force him to let them go. A mighty hand will force him to expel them from his country." God spoke to Moses and said to him, "I am Yahweh. To Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob I appeared as El Shaddai, but I did not make my name Yahweh known to them. I also made my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the country in which they were living as aliens. Furthermore, I have heard the groaning of the Israelites, enslaved by the Egyptians, and have remembered my covenant. So say to the Israelites, I am Yahweh. I shall free you from the forced labor of the Egyptians. I shall rescue you from their slavery, and I shall redeem you with outstretched arm and mighty acts of judgment. I shall take you as my people, and I shall be your God. And you will know that I am Yahweh your God, who have freed you from the forced labor of the Egyptians. Then I shall lead you into the country which I swore I would give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and shall give it to you as your heritage. I, Yahweh." And Moses repeated this to the Israelites, but they would not listen to Moses. So crushed was their spirit and so cruel their slavery. Yahweh then said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and tell him to let the Israelites leave his country." But Moses spoke out in Yahweh's presence and said, "The Israelites have not listened to me, so why should Pharaoh take any notice of a poor speaker like me?" Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron and sent them to Pharaoh king of Egypt, to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. These were their heads of families. The sons of Reuben, Israel's firstborn: Hanok, Palu, Hezron and Carmi. These are the clans of Reuben. The sons of Simeon: Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, and Shaul son of the Canaanite woman. These are the clans of Simeon. These were the names of the sons of Levi with their descendants: Gershon, Kohath and Merari. Levi lived for 137 years. The sons of Gershon: Libni and Shimi, with their clans. The sons of Kohath: Amram, Izhar, Hebron and Uzziel. Kohath lived for 133 years. The sons of Merari: Mali and Mushi. These are the clans of Levi with their descendants. Amram married Jochebed, his aunt, who bore him Aaron and Moses. Amram lived for 137 years. The sons of Izhar were Korah, Nepheg and Zikri. And the sons of Uzziel: Mishael, Elzaphan and Sithri. Aaron married Elisheba daughter of Amminadab and sister of Nahshon, and she bore him Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar and Ithamar. The sons of Korah: Asur, Elkanah and Abiasaph. These are the clans of the Korahites. Eleazar, son of Aaron, married one of Putiel's daughters who bore him Phinehas. These were the Levitical heads of families, according to clan. It was to this Aaron and Moses that Yahweh said, "Lead the Israelites out of Egypt in their armies." It was they who spoke to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, namely Moses and Aaron. Now the day when Yahweh spoke to Moses in Egypt, Yahweh said to Moses, "Tell Pharaoh king of Egypt everything that I am going to say to you." But Moses said to Yahweh's face, "I am a poor speaker, so why should Pharaoh take any notice of me?" Exodus chapter 7. Yahweh then said to Moses, "Look, I have made you as a god for Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron is to be your prophet. You must say whatever I command you, and your brother Aaron will repeat to Pharaoh that he is to let the Israelites leave his country. But I myself shall make Pharaoh stubborn, and shall perform many a sign and wonder in Egypt. Since Pharaoh will not listen to you, I shall lay my hand on Egypt and with great acts of judgment lead my armies, my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. And the Egyptians will know that I am Yahweh when I stretch out my hand against the Egyptians and lead the Israelites out of their country." Moses and Aaron did exactly as Yahweh had ordered. Moses was 80 years old and Aaron 83, when they spoke to Pharaoh. Yahweh said to Moses and Aaron, "If Pharaoh says to you, 'Display some marvel,' you must say to Aaron, 'Take your staff and throw it down in front of Pharaoh, and let it turn into a serpent.'" Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and did as Yahweh had ordered. Aaron threw down his staff in front of Pharaoh and his officials, and it turned into a serpent. Then Pharaoh in his turn called for the sages and sorcerers, and by their spells the magicians of Egypt did the same. Each threw his staff down, and these turned into serpents. But Aaron's staff swallowed up theirs. Pharaoh, however, remained obstinate and, as Yahweh had foretold, refused to listen to Moses and Aaron. Yahweh then said to Moses, "Pharaoh is adamant. He refuses to let the people go. Go to Pharaoh tomorrow morning as he makes his way to the water. Confront him on the river bank, and in your hand take the staff that turned into a snake. Say to him, 'Yahweh, God of the Hebrews, sent me to say, let my people go and worship in the desert. Up till now you have refused to listen. This is what Yahweh says. You will know that I am Yahweh by this. With the staff that is in my hand I shall strike the waters of the river, and they will turn to blood. The fish in the river will die, and the river will stink, and the Egyptians will not be able to drink the river water. Yahweh said to Moses, "Say to Aaron, take your staff and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over their rivers and canals, their marshland, and all their reservoirs, and they will turn to blood. There will be blood throughout the whole of Egypt, even in sticks and stones." Moses and Aaron did as Yahweh ordered. He raised his staff and struck the waters of the river, with Pharaoh and his officials looking on, and all the water in the river turned to blood. The fish in the river died, and the river stank, and the Egyptians could no longer drink the river water. Throughout the whole of Egypt there was blood. But by their spells the magicians of Egypt did the same. Pharaoh remained obstinate and, as Yahweh had foretold, refused to listen to Moses and Aaron. Pharaoh turned away and went back into his palace, taking no notice even of this. And the Egyptians all dug holes along the riverbank in search of drinking water, since they could not drink the river water. After Yahweh struck the river, 7 days went by. Then Yahweh said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and say to him, Yahweh says this, let my people go and worship me. If you refuse to let them go, I shall strike your whole territory with frogs. The river will swarm with frogs. They will make their way into your palace, into your bedroom, onto your bed, into the houses of your officials and subjects, into your ovens, into your kneading bowls. The frogs will actually clamber onto you, onto your subjects and onto all your officials." Exodus chapter 8. Yahweh then said to Moses, "Say to Aaron, stretch out your hand with your staff, over the rivers, the canals and the marshland, and bring the frogs up over the land of Egypt." So Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. But by their spells the magicians did the same, bringing frogs over the land of Egypt. Pharaoh then summoned Moses and Aaron and said, "Entreat Yahweh to take the frogs away from me and my subjects, and I promise to let the people go and sacrifice to Yahweh." Moses said to Pharaoh, "You are the one to gain by it. When would you like me to pray for you, your officials and your subjects, so as to rid you and your houses of the frogs so that they will be left only in the river?" "Tomorrow," he said. Moses said, "It shall be as you say, so that you will know that there is no one like Yahweh our God. The frogs will leave you, your houses, your officials and your subjects, and will be left only in the river." Moses and Aaron left Pharaoh's presence, and Moses pleaded with Yahweh about the frogs which he had inflicted on Pharaoh. Yahweh did as Moses asked, and in house and courtyard and field the frogs died. They piled them up in heaps and the country stank. But once Pharaoh saw that there had been a respite, he became obstinate and, as Yahweh had foretold, refused to listen to them. Yahweh then said to Moses, "Say to Aaron, stretch out your staff and strike the dust of the earth, and it will turn into mosquitoes throughout the whole of Egypt." Aaron stretched out his hand, with his staff, and struck the dust of the earth, and there were mosquitoes on man and beast. All the dust of the earth turned into mosquitoes throughout the whole of Egypt. By their spells the magicians tried to produce mosquitoes in the same way but failed, and there were mosquitoes on man and beast. So the magicians said to Pharaoh, "This is the finger of God." But Pharaoh was obstinate and, as Yahweh had foretold, refused to listen to them. Yahweh then said to Moses, "Get up early in the morning and confront Pharaoh as he makes his way to the water. Say to him, Yahweh says this, let my people go and worship me. But if you will not let my people go, I shall send horseflies on you, on your officials, your subjects and your houses. The Egyptians' houses will swarm with horseflies, and so will the very ground they stand on. But I shall exempt the region of Goshen, where my people are living, that day. There will be no horseflies there, so that you will know that I am Yahweh here in this country. I shall make a distinction between my people and your people. This sign will take place tomorrow." Yahweh did this, and great swarms of horseflies found their way into Pharaoh's palace, into his officials' houses and all over Egypt. The country was ruined by the horseflies. Pharaoh then summoned Moses and Aaron and said, Go and sacrifice to your God, inside the country." "That would never do," Moses said, "since what we sacrifice to Yahweh our God is outrageous to the Egyptians. If the Egyptians see us offering sacrifices which outrage them, won't they stone us? We shall make a 3 days' journey into the desert to sacrifice to Yahweh our God, as he has ordered us." Pharaoh said, "I will let you go and sacrifice to Yahweh your God in the desert, provided you do not go very far. Pray for me." "The moment I leave you," Moses said, "I shall pray to Yahweh. Tomorrow morning the horseflies will leave Pharaoh, his officials, and his subjects. But Pharaoh must stop trifling with us by not allowing the people to go and sacrifice to Yahweh." Moses then left Pharaoh's presence and prayed to Yahweh, and Yahweh did as Moses asked. The horseflies left Pharaoh, his officials, and his subjects. Not one remained. But Pharaoh became obstinate this time too and did not let the people go. Exodus chapter 9. Yahweh then said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and say to him, Yahweh, God of the Hebrews, says this, let my people go and worship me. If you refuse to let them go and detain them any longer, look, the hand of Yahweh will strike your livestock in the fields, horses, donkeys, camels, oxen and flocks with a deadly plague. Yahweh will discriminate between the livestock of Israel and the livestock of Egypt. Nothing of what belongs to the Israelites will die. Yahweh has fixed the time. Tomorrow, he has said, Yahweh will do this in the country." Next day Yahweh did this. All the Egyptians' livestock died, but nothing of the livestock owned by the Israelites died. Pharaoh had inquiries made, and found that of the livestock owned by the Israelites not a single beast had died. But Pharaoh was obstinate and did not let the people go. Yahweh then said to Moses and Aaron, "Take handfuls of soot from the kiln, and before Pharaoh's eyes let Moses throw it in the air. It will turn into fine dust over the whole of Egypt and produce boils breaking into sores on man and beast throughout the whole of Egypt." So they took soot from the kiln and stood in front of Pharaoh, and Moses threw it in the air, and on man and beast it brought out boils breaking into sores. And the magicians could not compete with Moses in the matter of the boils, for the magicians were covered with boils like all the other Egyptians. But Yahweh made Pharaoh stubborn and, as Yahweh had foretold to Moses, he did not listen to them. Yahweh then said to Moses, "Get up early in the morning and confront Pharaoh. Say to him, Yahweh, God of the Hebrews, says this, let my people go and worship me. For this time I am going to inflict all my plagues on you, on your officials and on your subjects, so that you will know that there is no one like me in the whole world. Had I stretched out my hand to strike you and your subjects with pestilence, you would have been swept from the earth. But I have let you survive for this reason, to display my power to you and to have my name talked of throughout the world. Since you take a high hand with my people, refusing to let them go, very well, at about this time tomorrow, I shall cause so severe a hail to fall as was never known in Egypt from the day of its foundation until now. So now send word to have your livestock and everything else you own in the fields put under cover. On man or beast, all that happen to be in the fields and are not brought indoors, the hail will fall and they will die." Those of Pharaoh's officials who respected what Yahweh said brought their slaves and livestock indoors. But those who did not take to heart what Yahweh said left their slaves and livestock in the fields. Yahweh then said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand towards heaven so that it hails throughout the whole of Egypt, on man and beast and on everything growing anywhere in Egypt." Moses stretched out his staff towards heaven, and Yahweh thundered and rained down hail. Lightning struck the earth and Yahweh rained down hail on Egypt. And so there was hail, and lightning accompanied the hail, very severe, such as had never been known anywhere in Egypt since it first became a nation. All over Egypt the hail struck down everything in the fields, man and beast, and the hail beat down everything growing in the fields and shattered all the trees in the fields. The only place where there was no hail was in the Goshen region, where the Israelites lived. Pharaoh then sent for Moses and Aaron and said, "This time I have sinned. Yahweh is in the right. I and my subjects are in the wrong. Pray to Yahweh, for we cannot bear any more of this thunder and hail. I promised to let you go. You need stay no longer." Moses said to him, "The moment I leave the city I shall stretch out my hands to Yahweh. The thunder will stop, and there will be no more hail, so that you may know that the earth belongs to Yahweh. But as for you and your officials, I know very well that you still have no respect for Yahweh God. The flax and the barley were ruined, since the barley was in the ear and the flax in bud, but the wheat and spelt were not destroyed, being late crops." Moses left Pharaoh and went out of the city. He stretched out his hands to Yahweh, and the thunder and hail ceased and the rain stopped pouring down on the earth. When Pharaoh saw that rain and hail and thunder had stopped, he relapsed into sin, and he and his officials became obstinate again. Pharaoh was stubborn and, as Yahweh had foretold through Moses, refused to let the Israelites go. Exodus chapter 10. Yahweh then said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh, for I have made him and his officials stubborn, to display these signs of mine among them, so that you can tell your sons and your grandsons how I made fools of the Egyptians and what signs I performed among them, so that you would know that I am Yahweh." Moses and Aaron then went to Pharaoh and said to him, "Yahweh, God of the Hebrews, says this, 'How much longer will you refuse to submit to me? Let my people go and worship me. Or if you refuse to let my people go, tomorrow I shall send locusts into your country. They will cover the surface of the soil so that the soil cannot be seen. They will devour the remainder of what has escaped, of what you have been left after the hail. They will devour all your trees growing in the fields. They will fill your houses, all your officials' houses and all the Egyptians' houses, something your ancestors and your ancestors' ancestors have never seen from the day they first appeared on earth until now." Then he turned on his heel and left Pharaoh's presence. At which Pharaoh's officials said to him, "How much longer are we to be tricked by this fellow? Let the people go and worship Yahweh their God. Do you not finally realize that Egypt is on the brink of ruin?" So Moses and Aaron were brought back to Pharaoh, who said to them, "Go and worship Yahweh your God. But who are to go?" Moses replied, "We shall take our young men and our old men. We shall take our sons and daughters, our flocks and our herds, since we are going to hold a feast in Yahweh's honor." Pharaoh said, "So I must let you go with your wives and children. May Yahweh preserve you. Plainly, you are up to no good. Oh no, you men may go and worship Yahweh, since that was your original request." With that, they were driven from Pharaoh's presence. Yahweh then said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over Egypt for the locusts. Let them invade Egypt and devour whatever is growing in the country, whatever the hail has left." Moses stretched his staff over Egypt, and over the country Yahweh sent an east wind which blew all that day and night. By morning, the east wind had brought the locusts. The locusts invaded the whole of Egypt and settled all over Egypt, in great swarms. Never had there been so many locusts before, nor would there be again. They covered the surface of the ground till the land was devastated. They devoured whatever was growing in the fields and all the fruit on the trees that the hail had left. No green was left on tree or plant in the fields anywhere in Egypt. Pharaoh sent urgently for Moses and Aaron and said, "I have sinned against Yahweh your God and against you. Now forgive my sin, I implore you, just this once, and entreat Yahweh your God to turn this deadly thing away from me." When Moses left Pharaoh's presence he prayed to Yahweh, and Yahweh changed the wind into a west wind, very strong, which carried the locusts away and swept them into the Sea of Reeds. There was not one locust left in the whole of Egypt. But Yahweh made Pharaoh stubborn, and he did not let the Israelites go. Yahweh then said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand towards heaven, and let darkness so thick that it can be felt, cover Egypt." So Moses stretched out his hand towards heaven, and for 3 days there was thick darkness over the whole of Egypt. No one could see anyone else or move about for 3 days. But all the Israelites did have light where they were living. Pharaoh summoned Moses and said, "Go and worship Yahweh, but your flocks and herds are to stay here. Your wives and children can go with you too." Moses said, "But now you must give us sacrifices and burnt offerings to offer to Yahweh our God. And our livestock will go with us too. Not a hoof will be left behind. For we may need animals from these to worship Yahweh our God. For until we get there we ourselves cannot tell how we are to worship Yahweh." But Yahweh made Pharaoh stubborn, and he refused to let them go. Pharaoh said to Moses, "Out of my sight. Be sure you never see my face again. For the next time you see my face you die." Moses then said, "You yourself have said it. I shall never see your face again." Exodus chapter 11. Yahweh then said to Moses, "I shall inflict one more plague on Pharaoh and Egypt, after which he will let you go away. When he lets you go, he will actually drive you out. Now instruct the people that every man is to ask his neighbor, and every woman hers, for silver and golden jewelry." And Yahweh made the Egyptians impressed with the people, while Moses himself was a man of great importance in Egypt in the opinion of Pharaoh's officials and the people. Moses then said, "Yahweh says this, at midnight I shall pass through Egypt, and all the firstborn in Egypt will die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, heir to his throne, to the firstborn of the slave girl at the mill, and all the firstborn of the livestock. And throughout Egypt there will be great wailing, such as never was before, nor will be again. But against the Israelites, whether man or beast, never a dog shall bark, so that you may know that Yahweh discriminates between Egypt and Israel. Then all these officials of yours will come down to me and, bowing low before me, say, 'Go away, you and all the people who follow you,' after which I shall go." And, hot with anger, he left Pharaoh's presence. Yahweh then said to Moses, "Pharaoh will not listen to you, so that more of my wonders may be displayed in Egypt." Moses and Aaron worked all these wonders in Pharaoh's presence. But Yahweh made Pharaoh stubborn, and he did not let the Israelites leave his country. Exodus chapter 12. Yahweh said to Moses and Aaron in Egypt, "This month must be the first of all the months for you, the first month of your year. Speak to the whole community of Israel and say, on the 10th day of this month each man must take an animal from the flock for his family. One animal for each household. If the household is too small for the animal, he must join with his neighbor nearest to his house, depending on the number of persons. When you choose the animal, you will take into account what each can eat. It must be an animal without blemish, a male 1 year old. You may choose it either from the sheep or from the goats. You must keep it till the 14th day of the month, when the whole assembly of the community of Israel will slaughter it at twilight. Some of the blood must then be taken and put on both doorposts and the lintel of the houses where it is eaten. That night, the flesh must be eaten, roasted over the fire. It must be eaten with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Do not eat any of it raw or boiled in water, but roast it over the fire, with the head, feet, and entrails. You must not leave any of it over till the morning. Whatever is left till morning you must burn. This is how you must eat it, with a belt round your waist, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. You must eat it hurriedly. It is a Passover in Yahweh's honor. That night I shall go through Egypt and strike down all the firstborn in Egypt, man and beast alike, and shall execute justice on all the gods of Egypt, I, Yahweh. The blood will be a sign for you on the houses where you are. When I see the blood I shall pass over you, and you will escape the destructive plague when I strike Egypt. This day must be commemorated by you, and you must keep it as a feast in Yahweh's honor. You must keep it as a feast day for all generations. This is a decree for all time. For 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. On the first day you must clean the leaven out of your houses. For anyone who eats leavened bread from the first to the 7th day must be outlawed from Israel. On the first day you must hold a sacred assembly. and on the seventh day a sacred assembly. On those days no work may be done. You will prepare only what each requires to eat. You must keep the feast of unleavened bread, because it was on that same day that I brought your armies out of Egypt. You will keep that day, generation after generation. This is a decree for all time. In the first month, from the evening of the 14th day until the evening of the 21st day, you must eat unleavened bread. For 7 days there may be no leaven in your houses, since anyone, either stranger or citizen of the country, who eats leavened bread will be outlawed from the community of Israel. You will eat nothing with leaven in it. Wherever you live, you will eat unleavened bread. Moses summoned all the elders of Israel and said to them, "Go and choose a lamb or kid for your families, and kill the Passover victim. Then take a bunch of hyssop, dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and with the blood from the basin touch the lintel and both doorposts. Then let none of you venture out of the house till morning. Then, when Yahweh goes through Egypt to strike it, and sees the blood on the lintel and on both doorposts, he will pass over the door and not allow the destroyer to enter your homes and strike. You will observe this as a decree binding you and your children for all time, and when you have entered the country which Yahweh will give you, as he has promised, you will observe this ritual. And when your children ask you, 'What does this ritual mean?' you will tell them, 'It is the Passover sacrifice in honor of Yahweh, who passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt, and struck Egypt but spared our houses.' And the people bowed in worship. The Israelites then went away and did as Yahweh had ordered Moses and Aaron. And at midnight Yahweh struck down all the firstborn in Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, heir to his throne, to the firstborn of the prisoner in the dungeon, and the firstborn of all the livestock. Pharaoh and all his officials and all the Egyptians got up in the night, and there was great wailing in Egypt, for there was not a house without its dead. It was still dark when Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, 'Up, leave my subjects, you and the Israelites. Go and worship Yahweh as you have asked, and take your flocks and herds as you have asked, and go, and bless me too.' The Egyptians urged the people on and hurried them out of the country, because, they said, 'Otherwise we shall all be dead.' So the people carried off their dough still unleavened, their bowls wrapped in their cloaks, on their shoulders. The Israelites did as Moses had told them and asked the Egyptians for silver and golden jewelry and clothing. Yahweh made the Egyptians so much impressed with the people that they gave them what they asked. So they despoiled the Egyptians. The Israelites left Ramesses for Sukkot, about 600,000 on the marchmen, that is, not counting their families. A mixed crowd of people went with them, and flocks and herds, quantities of livestock. And with the dough which they had brought from Egypt they baked unleavened cakes, because the dough had not risen, since they had been driven out of Egypt without time to linger or to prepare food for themselves. The time that the Israelites spent in Egypt was 430 years. And on the very day the 430 years ended, all Yahweh's armies left Egypt. The night when Yahweh kept vigil to bring them out of Egypt must be kept as a vigil in honor of Yahweh by all Israelites, for all generations. Yahweh said to Moses and Aaron, "This is the ritual for the Passover. No alien may eat it, but any slave bought for money may eat it, once you have circumcised him. No stranger and no hired servant may eat it. It must be eaten in one house alone. You will not take any of the meat out of the house, nor may you break any of its bones. The whole community of Israel must keep it. Should a stranger residing with you wish to keep the Passover in honor of Yahweh, all the males of his household must be circumcised. He will then be allowed to keep it and will count as a citizen of the country. But no uncircumcised person may eat it. The same law will apply to the citizen and the stranger resident among you." The Israelites all did as Yahweh had ordered Moses and Aaron, and that same day Yahweh brought the Israelites out of Egypt in their armies. Exodus chapter 13. Yahweh spoke to Moses and said, "Consecrate all the firstborn to me, the first birth from every womb, among the Israelites. Whether man or beast, it is mine. Moses said to the people, "Remember this day, on which you came out of Egypt, from the place of slave labor. For by the strength of his hand Yahweh brought you out of it. No leavened bread may be eaten. On this day, in the month of Abib, you are leaving, and when Yahweh has brought you into the country of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, flowing with milk and honey, which he swore to your ancestors that he would give you, then you must observe this rite in the same month. For 7 days you will eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day there must be a feast in Yahweh's honor. During these 7 days unleavened bread may be eaten. No leavened bread may be seen among you, no leaven among you throughout your territory. And on that day you will explain to your son, 'This is because of what Yahweh did for me when I came out of Egypt.' This will serve as a sign on your hand would serve, or a reminder on your forehead, and in that way the law of Yahweh will be ever on your lips. For with a mighty hand Yahweh brought you out of Egypt. You shall observe this law at its appointed time, year by year. When Yahweh has brought you into the Canaanites' country, as he swore to you and your ancestors that he would, and given it to you, to Yahweh you must make over whatever first issues from the womb, and every firstborn cast by animals belonging to you. These males belong to Yahweh. But every firstborn donkey you will redeem with a lamb or kid. If you do not redeem it, you must break its neck. All the human firstborn, however, among your sons, you will redeem. And when your son asks you in days to come, 'What does this mean?' you will tell him, 'By the strength of his hand Yahweh brought us out of Egypt, out of the place of slave labor. When Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, Yahweh killed all the firstborn in Egypt, of man and beast alike. This is why I sacrifice every male first issuing from the womb to Yahweh and redeem every firstborn of my sons. This will serve as a sign on your hand would serve, or a headband on your forehead. For by the strength of his hand Yahweh brought us out of Egypt.' When Pharaoh had let the people go, God did not let them take the road to the Philistines' territory, although that was the shortest, in case, God thought, the prospect of fighting makes the people change their minds and turn back to Egypt. Instead, God led the people a roundabout way through the desert of the Sea of Reeds. The Israelites left Egypt fully armed. Moses took with him the bones of Joseph, since Joseph had put the Israelites on solemn oath with the words, 'It is sure that God will visit you,' he had said, 'and when that day comes you must take my bones away from here with you.' They set out from Sukkot and encamped at Etham, on the edge of the desert. Yahweh preceded them, by day in a pillar of cloud to show them the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, so that they could march by day and by night. The pillar of cloud never left its place ahead of the people during the day, nor the pillar of fire during the night. Exodus Chapter 14. Yahweh spoke to Moses and said, "Tell the Israelites to turn back and pitch camp in front of Pi-Hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, facing Baal-zephon. You must pitch your camp opposite this place, beside the sea, and then Pharaoh will think, 'The Israelites are wandering to and fro in the countryside. The desert has closed in on them.' I shall then make Pharaoh stubborn, and he will set out in pursuit of them. And I shall win glory for myself at the expense of Pharaoh and his whole army, and then the Egyptians will know that I am Yahweh." And the Israelites did this. When Pharaoh king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, he and his officials changed their attitude towards the people. "What have we done," they said, "allowing Israel to leave our service?" So Pharaoh had his chariot harnessed and set out with his troops, taking 600 of the best chariots and all the other chariots in Egypt, with officers in each. Yahweh made Pharaoh king of Egypt stubborn, and he gave chase to the Israelites. The Israelites marched confidently away, but the Egyptians, all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, his horsemen and his army, gave chase and caught up with them where they lay encamped beside the sea near Pi-Hahiroth, facing Baal-zephon. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians in pursuit of them. The Israelites were terrified and cried out to Yahweh for help. To Moses they said, "Was it for lack of graves in Egypt, that you had to lead us out to die in the desert? What was the point of bringing us out of Egypt? Did we not tell you as much in Egypt? Leave us alone, we said. We would rather work for the Egyptians. We prefer to work for the Egyptians than to die in the desert. Moses said to the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see what Yahweh will do to rescue you today. The Egyptians you see today you will never see again. Yahweh will do the fighting for you. All you need to do is to keep calm." Yahweh then said to Moses, "Why cry out to me? Tell the Israelites to march on. Your part is to raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it, so that the Israelites can walk through the sea on dry ground, while I, for my part, shall make the Egyptians so stubborn that they will follow them, and I shall win glory for myself at the expense of Pharaoh and all his army, chariots and horsemen. And when I have won glory for myself at the expense of Pharaoh and his chariots and horsemen, the Egyptians will know that I am Yahweh." Then the angel of God, who preceded the army of Israel, changed station and followed behind them. The pillar of cloud moved from their front and took position behind them. It came between the army of the Egyptians and the army of Israel. The cloud was dark, and the night passed without the one drawing any closer to the other the whole night long. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and Yahweh drove the sea back with a strong easterly wind all night and made the sea into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went on dry ground right through the sea, with walls of water to right and left of them. The Egyptians gave chase, and all Pharaoh's horses, chariots and horsemen went into the sea after them. In the morning watch, Yahweh looked down on the army of the Egyptians from the pillar of fire and cloud and threw the Egyptian army into confusion. He so clogged their chariot wheels that they drove on only with difficulty, which made the Egyptians say, "Let us flee from Israel, for Yahweh is fighting on their side against the Egyptians." Then Yahweh said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea and let the waters flow back on the Egyptians and on their chariots and their horsemen." Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and, as day broke, the sea returned to its bed. The fleeing Egyptians ran straight into it, and Yahweh overthrew the Egyptians in the middle of the sea. The returning waters washed right over the chariots and horsemen of Pharaoh's entire army, which had followed the Israelites into the sea. Not a single one of them was left. The Israelites, however, had marched through the sea on dry ground, with walls of water to right and left of them. That day, Yahweh rescued Israel from the clutches of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians lying dead on the seashore. When Israel saw the mighty deed that Yahweh had performed against the Egyptians, the people revered Yahweh and put their faith in Yahweh and in Moses, his servant. Exodus, chapter 15. It was then that Moses and the Israelites sang this song in Yahweh's honor. "I shall sing to Yahweh, for he has covered himself in glory. Horse and rider he has thrown into the sea. Yah is my strength and my song. To him I owe my deliverance. He is my God, and I shall praise him, my father's God, and I shall extol him. Yahweh is a warrior. Yahweh is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and army he has hurled into the sea. The pick of his officers have been drowned in the sea of reeds. The ocean has closed over them. They have sunk to the bottom like a stone. Your right hand, Yahweh, wins glory by its strength. Your right hand, Yahweh, shatters your foes, and by your great majesty you fell your assailants. You unleash your fury, it consumes them like chaff. A blast from your nostrils and the waters piled high. The waves stood firm as a dike. The bed of the sea became firm ground. The enemy said, I shall give chase and overtake. I shall share out the spoil and glut myself on them. I shall draw my sword. My hand will destroy them. You blew with your breath. The sea closed over them. They sank like lead in the terrible waters. Yahweh, who is like you, majestic in sanctity? Who like you among the holy ones? Fearsome of deed, worker of wonders? You stretched your right hand out. The earth swallowed them. In your faithful love you led out the people you had redeemed. In your strength you have guided them to your holy dwelling. Hearing of this, the peoples tremble. Pangs seize on the people of Philistia. The chieftains of Edom are dismayed. Moab's princes. Panic has seized them. All the inhabitants of Canaan have melted away. On them fall terror and dread. Through the power of your arm they are still as stone while your people are passing, Yahweh. While the people you have purchased are passing. You will bring them in and plant them on the mountain which is your heritage, the place which you, Yahweh, have made your dwelling, the sanctuary Yahweh, prepared by your own hands. Yahweh will be king forever and ever. For when Pharaoh's cavalry, with his chariots and horsemen, had gone into the sea, Yahweh brought the waters of the sea back over them, though the Israelites went on dry ground right through the sea. The prophetess Miriam, Aaron's sister, took up a tambourine, and all the women followed her with tambourines, dancing, while Miriam took up from them the refrain, "Sing to Yahweh, for he has covered himself in glory, horse and rider he has thrown into the sea." Moses led Israel away from the Sea of Reeds, and they entered the desert of Shur. They then traveled through the desert for 3 days without finding water. When they reached Marah, they could not drink the Marah water because it was bitter. This is why the place was named Marah. The people complained to Moses, saying, "What are we to drink?" Moses appealed to Yahweh for help, and Yahweh showed him a piece of wood. When Moses threw it into the water became sweet. There he laid down a statute and law for them, and there he put them to the test. Then he said, "If you listen carefully to the voice of Yahweh your God and do what he regards as right, if you pay attention to his commandments and keep all his laws, I shall never inflict on you any of the diseases that I inflicted on the Egyptians, for I am Yahweh your healer." So they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs and 70 palm trees, and there they pitched camp beside the water. Exodus chapter 16. Setting out from Elim, the whole community of Israelites entered the desert of Sin, lying between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the 2nd month after they had left Egypt. And the whole community of Israelites began complaining about Moses and Aaron in the desert and said to them, "Why did we not die at Yahweh's hand in Egypt, where we used to sit round the flesh pots and could eat to our heart's content? As it is, you have led us into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death." Yahweh then said to Moses, "Look, I shall rain down bread for you from the heavens. Each day the people must go out and collect their ration for the day. I propose to test them in this way to see whether they will follow my law or not. On the 6th day, however, when they prepare what they have brought in, this must be twice as much as they collect on ordinary days." Moses and Aaron then said to the whole community of Israelites, "This evening you will know that it was Yahweh who brought you out of Egypt, and tomorrow morning you will see the glory of Yahweh, for Yahweh has heard your complaints about him. What are we, that your complaint should be against us?" Moses then said, "This evening Yahweh will give you meat to eat, and tomorrow morning bread to your heart's content, for Yahweh has heard your complaints about him. What do we count for? Your complaints are not against us, but against Yahweh." Moses then said to Aaron, "Say to the whole community of Israelites, approach Yahweh's presence, for he has heard your complaints." As Aaron was speaking to the whole community of Israelites, they turned towards the desert, and there the glory of Yahweh appeared in the cloud. Yahweh then spoke to Moses and said, "I have heard the Israelites' complaints. Speak to them as follows. At twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you will have bread to your heart's content, and then you will know that I am Yahweh your God." That evening, quails flew in and covered the camp, and next morning there was a layer of dew all round the camp. When the layer of dew lifted, there on the surface of the desert was something fine and granular, as fine as hoarfrost on the ground. As soon as the Israelites saw this, they said to one another, "What is that?" Not knowing what it was. "That," Moses told them, "is the food which Yahweh has given you to eat. These are Yahweh's orders. Each of you must collect as much as he needs to eat, a homer per head for each person in his tent." The Israelites did this. They collected it, some more, some less. When they measured out what they had collected by the homer, no one who had collected more had too much. No one who had collected less had too little. Each had collected as much as he needed to eat. Moses then said, "No one may keep any of it for tomorrow." But some of them took no notice of Moses and kept part of it for the following day, and it bred maggots and smelt foul. And Moses was angry with them. Morning by morning they collected it, each man as much as he needed to eat, and once the sun grew hot, it melted away. Now, on the 6th day they collected twice the amount of food, 2 homer per person, and all the leaders of the community came and told Moses this. Moses replied, "This is what Yahweh said, tomorrow is a day of complete rest, a Sabbath sacred to Yahweh. Bake what you want to bake, boil what you want to boil. Put aside what is left over, to be kept for tomorrow." So, as Moses ordered, they put it aside for the following day, and its smell was not foul, nor were there maggots in it. "Eat it today," Moses said, "for today is a Sabbath for Yahweh. You will find none in the fields today. For 6 days you will collect it, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, there will be none." On the 7th day some of the people went out to collect it, but they found none. Yahweh then said to Moses, "How much longer will you refuse to obey my commandments and laws? Look, Yahweh has given you the Sabbath. This is why he gives you 2 days' food on the 6th day. Each of you must stay in his place. On the 7th day no one may leave his home." So on the 7th day the people rested. The house of Israel named it manna. It was like coriander seed. It was white, and its taste was like that of wafers made with honey. Moses then said, "These are Yahweh's orders. Fill a homer with it and preserve it for your descendants, so that they can see the bread on which I fed you in the desert when I brought you out of Egypt." Moses then said to Aaron, "Take a jar and in it put a full homer of manna and store it in Yahweh's presence, to be kept for your descendants." Accordingly, Aaron stored it in front of the testimony, to be preserved, as Yahweh had ordered Moses. The Israelites ate manna for 40 years, up to the time they reached inhabited country. They ate manna up to the time they reached the frontiers of Canaan. A homer is 1/10 of an ephah. Exodus chapter 17. The whole community of Israelites left the desert of Sin, traveling by stages as Yahweh ordered. They pitched camp at Rephidim where there was no water for the people to drink. The people took issue with Moses for this and said, "Give us water to drink." Moses replied, "Why take issue with me? Why do you put Yahweh to the test?" But tormented by thirst, the people complained to Moses. "Why did you bring us out of Egypt," they said, "only to make us, our children and our livestock, die of thirst?" Moses appealed to Yahweh for help. "How am I to deal with this people?" he said. "Any moment now they will stone me." Yahweh then said to Moses, "Go on ahead of the people, taking some of the elders of Israel with you. In your hand take the staff with which you struck the river, and go. I shall be waiting for you there on the rock, at Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out for the people to drink." This was what Moses did, with the elders of Israel looking on. He gave the place the names Massah and Meribah because of the Israelites' contentiousness and because they put Yahweh to the test by saying, "Is Yahweh with us, or not?" The Amalekites then came and attacked Israel at Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, "Pick some men and tomorrow morning go out and engage Amalek. I, for my part, shall take my stand on the hilltop with the staff of God in my hand." Joshua did as Moses had told him and went out to engage Amalek, while Moses, Aaron and Hur went up to the top of the hill. As long as Moses kept his arms raised, Israel had the advantage. When he let his arms fall, the advantage went to Amalek. But Moses' arms grew heavy, so they took a stone and put it under him, and on this he sat, with Aaron and Hur supporting his arms on each side. Thus his arms remained unwavering till sunset, and Joshua defeated Amalek, putting their people to the sword. Yahweh then said to Moses, "Write this down in a book to commemorate it, and repeat it over to Joshua, for I shall blot out all memory of Amalek under heaven." Moses then built an altar and named it Yahweh Nissi, meaning, "Lay hold of Yahweh's banner." Yahweh will be at war with Amalek generation after generation. Exodus chapter 18. Jethro, priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, had heard all about what God had done for Moses and for Israel his people, how Yahweh had brought Israel out of Egypt. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, then took back Zipporah, Moses' wife, whom Moses had sent home, with her 2 sons. One of them was called Gershom because he had said, "I am an alien in a foreign land," and the other called Eleazar because, "My father's God is my help and has delivered me from Pharaoh's sword." Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, with Moses' sons and wife, came to Moses in the desert where he was encamped, at the mountain of God. "Here is your father-in-law Jethro approaching," Moses was told, "with your wife and her 2 sons." So Moses went out to greet his father-in-law, bowed low to him and kissed him. And when each had asked how the other was, they went into the tent. Moses then told his father-in-law all about what Yahweh had done to Pharaoh and the Egyptians for Israel's sake, and about all the hardships that they had encountered on the way, and how Yahweh had rescued them. And Jethro was delighted at all Yahweh's goodness to Israel in having rescued them from the clutches of the Egyptians. "Blessed be Yahweh," Jethro exclaimed, "for having rescued you from the clutches of the Egyptians and the clutches of Pharaoh, for having rescued the people from the grasp of the Egyptians. Now I know that Yahweh is greater than all other gods." Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, then offered a burnt offering and other sacrifices to God. And Aaron and all the elders of Israel came and ate with Moses' father-in-law in the presence of God. On the following day, Moses took his seat to administer justice for the people, and the people were standing round him from morning till evening. Seeing all he did for the people, Moses' father-in-law said to him, "Why do you do this for the people? Why sit here alone with the people standing round you from morning till evening?" Moses replied to his father-in-law, "Because the people come to me to consult God. When they have a problem, they come to me, and I give a ruling between the one and the other and make God's statutes and laws known to them." Moses' father-in-law then said to him, "What you are doing is not right. You will only tire yourself out, and the people with you too, for the work is too heavy for you. You cannot do it all yourself. Now listen to the advice I am going to give you, and God be with you. Your task is to represent the people to God, to lay their cases before God, and to teach them the statutes and laws, and show them the way they ought to follow and how they ought to behave. At the same time, from the people at large choose capable and God-fearing men, men who are trustworthy and incorruptible, and put them in charge of them as heads of thousands, hundreds, 50s and 10s, and make them the people's permanent judges. They will refer all important matters to you, but all minor matters they will decide themselves, so making things easier for you by sharing the burden with you. If you do this, and may God so command you, you will be able to stand the strain, and all these people will go home satisfied." Moses took his father-in-law's advice and did just as he said. Moses chose capable men from all Israel and put them in charge of the people as heads of thousands, hundreds, 50s and 10s. These acted as the people's permanent judges. They referred hard cases to Moses but decided minor matters themselves. Moses then set his father-in-law on his way, and he traveled back to his own country. Exodus chapter 19. 3 months to the day after leaving Egypt, the Israelites reached the desert of Sinai. Setting out from Rephidim, they reached the desert of Sinai and pitched camp in the desert. There, facing the mountain, Israel pitched camp. Moses then went up to God, and Yahweh called to him from the mountain, saying, "Say this to the house of Jacob. Tell the Israelites, you have seen for yourselves what I did to the Egyptians and how I carried you away on eagle's wings and brought you to me. So now, if you are really prepared to obey me and keep my covenant, you, out of all peoples, shall be my personal possession, for the whole world is mine. For me you shall be a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. Those are the words you ought to say to the Israelites." So Moses went and summoned the people's elders and acquainted them with everything that Yahweh had bidden him. And the people all replied with one accord, "Whatever Yahweh has said, we will do." Moses then reported to Yahweh what the people had said. Yahweh then said to Moses, "Look, I shall come to you in a dense cloud so that the people will hear when I speak to you and believe you ever after." Moses then told Yahweh what the people had said. Yahweh then said to Moses, "Go to the people and tell them to sanctify themselves today and tomorrow. They must wash their clothes and be ready for the day after tomorrow. For the day after tomorrow, in the sight of all the people, Yahweh will descend on Mount Sinai. You will mark out the limits of the mountain and say, 'Take care not to go up the mountain or to touch the edge of it. Anyone who touches the mountain will be put to death. No one may lay a hand on him. He must be stoned or shot by arrow. Whether man or beast, he shall not live. When the ram's horn sounds a long blast, they must go up the mountain.'" So Moses came down from the mountain to the people. He made the people sanctify themselves, and they washed their clothes. He then said to the people, "Be ready for the day after tomorrow. Do not touch a woman." Now at daybreak 2 days later, there were peals of thunder and flashes of lightning, dense cloud on the mountain and a very loud trumpet blast. And in the camp, all the people trembled. Then Moses led the people out of the camp to meet God, and they took their stand at the bottom of the mountain. Mount Sinai was entirely wrapped in smoke, because Yahweh had descended on it in the form of fire. The smoke rose like smoke from a furnace, and the whole mountain shook violently. Louder and louder grew the trumpeting. Moses spoke, and God answered him in the thunder. Yahweh descended on Mount Sinai, on the top of the mountain, and Yahweh called Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. Yahweh then said to Moses, "Go down and warn the people not to break through to look at Yahweh, or many of them will perish. Even the priests who do have access to Yahweh must sanctify themselves, or Yahweh may burst out against them." Moses said to Yahweh, "The people cannot come up Mount Sinai, since you yourself warned us to mark out the limits of the mountain and declare it sacred." Yahweh said, "Away with you! Go down! Then come back bringing Aaron with you. But do not allow the priests and people to break through to come up to Yahweh, or he may burst out against them." So Moses went down to the people and spoke to them. Exodus chapter 20. Then God spoke all these words. He said, "I am Yahweh your God who brought you out of Egypt, where you lived as slaves. You shall have no other gods to rival me. You shall not make yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything in heaven above or on earth beneath or in the waters under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them. For I, Yahweh your God, am a jealous God, and I punish a parent's fault in the children, the grandchildren, and the great-grandchildren among those who hate me. But I act with faithful love towards thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not misuse the name of Yahweh your God, for Yahweh will not leave unpunished anyone who misuses his name. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. For 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath for Yahweh your God. You shall do no work that day, neither you nor your son nor your daughter nor your servants, men or women, nor your animals nor the alien living with you. For in 6 days Yahweh made the heavens, earth and sea and all that these contain, but on the seventh day he rested. That is why Yahweh has blessed the Sabbath day and made it sacred. Honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land that Yahweh your God is giving you. You shall not kill. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false evidence against your neighbor. You shall not set your heart on your neighbor's house. You shall not set your heart on your neighbor's spouse, or servant, man or woman, or ox, or donkey, or any of your neighbor's possessions. Seeing the thunder pealing, the lightning flashing, the trumpet blasting and the mountain smoking, The people were all terrified and kept their distance. "Speak to us yourself," they said to Moses, "and we will obey. But do not let God speak to us, or we shall die." Moses said to the people, "Do not be afraid. God has come to test you, so that your fear of him, being always in your mind, may keep you from sinning." So the people kept their distance while Moses approached the dark cloud where God was. Yahweh said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites this. You have seen for yourselves how I have spoken to you from heaven. You must not make gods of silver to rival me, nor must you make yourselves gods of gold. You must make me an altar of earth on which to sacrifice your burnt offerings and communion sacrifices, your sheep and cattle. Wherever I choose to have my name remembered, I shall come to you and bless you. If you make me an altar of stone, do not build it of dressed stones. For if you use a chisel on it, you will profane it. You must not go up to my altar by steps, in case you expose your nakedness on them." Exodus chapter 21. These are the laws you must give them. When you buy a Hebrew slave, his service will last for 6 years. In the 7th year he will leave a free man without paying compensation. If he came single, he will depart single. If he came married, his wife will depart with him. If his master gives him a wife and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children will belong to her master, and he will depart alone. But if the slave says, "I love my master and my wife and children, I do not wish to be freed," then his master will bring him before God, and then, leading him to the door or the doorpost, his master will pierce his ear with an awl, and the slave will be permanently his. If a man sells his daughter as a slave, she will not leave as male slaves do. If she does not please her master who intended her for himself, he must let her be bought back. He has not the right to sell her to foreigners, for this would be a breach of faith with her. If he intends her for his son, he must treat her as custom requires daughters to be treated. If he takes another wife, he must not reduce the food, clothing, or conjugal rights of the first one. Should he deprive her of these 3 things, she will leave a free woman, without paying compensation. Anyone who by violence causes a death must be put to death. If, however, he has not planned to do it but it comes from God by his hand, he can take refuge in a place which I shall appoint for you. But should any person dare to kill another with deliberate planning, you will take that person even from my altar to be put to death. Anyone who strikes father or mother will be put to death. Anyone who abducts a person, whether that person has since been sold or is still held, will be put to death. Anyone who curses father or mother will be put to death. If people quarrel and one strikes the other a blow with stone or fist so that the injured party, though not dead, is confined to bed, but later recovers and can go about, even with a stick, the one who struck the blow will have no liability, other than to compensate the injured party for the enforced inactivity and to take care of the injured party until the cure is complete. If someone beats his slave, male or female, and the slave dies at his hands, he must pay the penalty. But should the slave survive for 1 or 2 days, he will pay no penalty because the slave is his by right of purchase. If people, when brawling, hurt a pregnant woman and she suffers a miscarriage but no further harm is done, the person responsible will pay compensation as fixed by the woman's master, paying as much as the judges decide. If further harm is done, however, you will award life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, stroke for stroke. If anyone strikes the eye of his slave, male or female, and destroys the use of it, he will give the slave his freedom to compensate for the eye. If he knocks out the tooth of his slave, male or female, he will give the slave his freedom to compensate for the tooth. If an ox gores a man or woman to death, the ox will be stoned and its meat will not be eaten, but the owner of the ox will not be liable. But if the ox has been in the habit of goring before, and if its owner has been warned but has not kept it under control, then should this ox kill a man or woman, it will be stoned and its owner put to death. If a ransom is imposed on the owner, he will pay whatever is imposed, to redeem his life. If the ox gores a boy or a girl, it will be treated in accordance with this same rule. If the ox gores a slave, male or female, its owner will pay the price, 30 shekels, to their master, and the ox will be stoned. If anyone leaves a pit uncovered, or digs a pit and does not cover it, and an ox or donkey falls into it, then the owner of the pit will make good the loss by compensating its owner, and the dead animal will be his. If anyone's ox injures anyone else's ox causing its death, the owners will sell and share the money for it. They will also share the dead animal. But if it is common knowledge that the ox has been in the habit of goring before, and its owner has not kept it under control, the owner will repay ox for ox, and will keep the dead animal. If anyone steals an ox or a sheep and slaughters or sells it, he will pay back 5 beasts from the herd for the ox, and 4 animals from the flock for the sheep. Exodus chapter 22. If a thief is caught breaking in and is struck a mortal blow, his blood may not be avenged, but if it happens after sunrise, his blood may be avenged. He will make full restitution. If he has not the means, he will be sold to pay for what he has stolen. If the stolen animal is found alive in his possession, be it ox, donkey or animal from the flock, he will pay back double. If anyone puts his animals out to graze in a field or vineyard and lets them graze in someone else's field, he will make restitution for the part of the field that has been grazed on the basis of its yield. But if he has let the whole field be grazed, he will make restitution in proportion to the best crop of the field or vineyard. If a fire breaks out, setting light to thorn bushes and burning stacks, standing corn or the field as a result, the person who started the fire will make full restitution. If anyone entrusts money or goods to someone else's keeping and these are stolen from that person's house, the thief, if he can be discovered, will repay double. Should the thief not be discovered, the owner of the house will come into the presence of God to declare that he has not laid hands on the other person's property. In every case of lawbreaking involving an ox, donkey, animal from the flock, clothing or lost property of any sort, the ownership of which is disputed, both parties will lay their case before God. The party whom God pronounces guilty will pay back double to the other. If anyone entrusts a donkey, ox, animal from the flock or any other animal to someone else's keeping, and it dies or breaks a limb or is carried off without anyone seeing, an oath by Yahweh will decide between the two parties whether the keeper has laid hands on the other's property or not. The owner will take what remains. The keeper will not have to make good the loss. Only if the animal has been stolen from him will he make restitution to the owner. If it has been savaged by a wild animal, he must bring the savaged remains of the animal as evidence, and will then not have to make restitution. If anyone borrows an animal from someone else, and it breaks a limb or dies in the owner's absence, he will make full restitution. But if the animal's owner has been present, he will not have to make good the loss. If the owner has hired it out, he will get the cost of its hire. If a man seduces a virgin who is not engaged to be married, he will pay her bride price and make her his wife. If her father absolutely refuses to let him have her, he will pay a sum equivalent to the bride price of a virgin. You will not allow a sorceress to live. Anyone who has intercourse with an animal will be put to death. Anyone who sacrifices to other gods will be put under the curse of destruction. You will not molest or oppress aliens, for you yourselves were once aliens in Egypt. You will not ill-treat widows or orphans. If you ill-treat them in any way and they make an appeal to me for help, I shall certainly hear their appeal. My anger will be roused and I shall put you to the sword. Then your own wives will be widows and your own children orphans. If you lend money to any of my people, to anyone poor among you, you will not play the usurer with him. You will not demand interest from him. If you take someone's cloak in pledge, you will return it to him at sunset. It is all the covering he has. It is the cloak he wraps his body in. What else will he sleep in? If he appeals to me, I shall listen. At least with me he will find compassion. You will not revile God, nor curse your people's leader. Do not be slow about making offerings from your abundance and your surplus. You will give me the firstborn of your children. You will do the same with your flocks and herds. For the first 7 days the firstborn will stay with its mother. On the 8th day you will give it to me. You must be people consecrated to me. You will not eat the meat of anything in the countryside savaged by wild animals. You will throw it to the dogs. Exodus chapter 23. You will not spread false rumors. You will not lend support to the wicked by giving untrue evidence. You will not be led into wrongdoing by the majority, nor, when giving evidence in a lawsuit, side with the majority to pervert the course of justice. Nor will you show partiality to the poor in a lawsuit. If you come on your enemy's ox or donkey straying, you will take it back to him. If you see the donkey of someone who hates you fallen under its load, do not stand back. You must go and help him with it. You will not cheat the poor among you of their rights at law. Keep clear of fraud. Do not cause the death of the innocent or upright, and do not acquit the guilty. You will accept no bribes, for a bribe blinds the clear-sighted and is the ruin of the cause of the upright. You will not oppress the alien. You know how an alien feels, for you yourselves were once aliens in Egypt. For 6 years you will sow your land and gather its produce, but in the 7th year you will let it lie fallow and forego all produce from it, so that those of your people who are poor can take food from it and the wild animals eat what they have left. You will do the same with your vineyard and your olive grove. For 6 days you will do your work, and on the 7th you will rest, so that your ox and your donkey may rest and the child of your slave girl have a breathing space, and the alien too. Take notice of everything I have told you, and do not mention the name of any other god. Let none ever be heard from your lips. 3 times a year you will hold a festival in my honor. You will observe the feast of unleavened bread. For 7 days you will eat unleavened bread, as I have commanded you, at the appointed time in the month of Abib, for in that month you came out of Egypt. No one will appear before me empty-handed. You will also observe the feast of harvest, of the first fruits of your labors in sowing the fields, and the feast of ingathering, at the end of the year, once you have brought the fruits of your labors in from the fields. 3 times a year all your menfolk will appear before Lord Yahweh. You will not offer the blood of my victim with leavened bread, nor will the fat of my feast be kept till the following day. You will bring the best of the first fruits of your soil to the house of Yahweh your God. You will not boil a kid in its mother's milk. Look, I am sending an angel to precede you, to guard you as you go and bring you to the place that I have prepared. Revere him and obey what he says. Do not defy him. He will not forgive any wrongdoing on your part, for my name is in him. If, however, you obey what he says and do whatever I order, I shall be an enemy to your enemies and a foe to your foes. My angel will precede you and lead you to the home of the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hivites and the Jebusites, whom I shall exterminate. You will not bow down to their gods or worship them or observe their rites, but throw them down and smash their cultic stones. You will worship Yahweh your God, and then I shall bless your food and water, and keep you free of sickness. In your country no woman will miscarry, none be sterile, and I shall give you your full term of life. I shall send terror of myself ahead of you. I shall throw all the peoples you encounter into confusion, and make all your enemies take to their heels. I shall send hornets ahead of you to drive Hivite, Canaanite, and Hittite out before you. I shall not drive them out ahead of you in a single year, or the land might become a desert where wild animals would multiply to your cost. I shall drive them out little by little before you, until your numbers grow sufficient for you to take possession of the land. And your frontiers I shall fix from the Sea of Reeds to the Sea of the Philistines, and from the desert to the river. For I shall put the inhabitants of the territory at your mercy, and you will drive them out before you. You will make no pact with them or with their gods. They may not stay in your country, or they might make you sin against me, for you would serve their gods, and that would be a snare for you. Exodus chapter 24. He then said to Moses, "Come up to Yahweh, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and bow down at a distance. Moses alone will approach Yahweh. The others will not approach, nor will the people come up with him." Moses went and told the people all Yahweh's words and all the laws. And all the people answered with one voice, "All the words Yahweh has spoken we will carry out." Moses put all Yahweh's words into writing, and early next morning he built an altar at the foot of the mountain, with 12 standing stones for the 12 tribes of Israel. Then he sent certain young Israelites to offer burnt offerings and sacrifice bullocks to Yahweh as communion sacrifices. Moses then took half the blood and put it into basins, and the other half he sprinkled on the altar. Then, taking the book of the covenant, he read it to the listening people, who then said, "We shall do everything that Yahweh has said. We shall obey." Moses then took the blood and sprinkled it over the people, saying, "This is the blood of the covenant which Yahweh has made with you," entailing all these stipulations. Moses, Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and 70 elders of Israel then went up, and they saw the God of Israel, beneath whose feet there was what looked like a sapphire pavement, pure as the heavens themselves. But he did no harm to the Israelite notables. They actually gazed on God and then ate and drank. Yahweh said to Moses, "Come up to me on the mountain. Stay there, and I will give you the stone tablets, the law and the commandment, which I have written for their instruction." Moses made ready, with Joshua his assistant, and they went up the mountain of God. He said to the elders, "Wait here for us until we come back to you. You have Aaron and Hur with you. If anyone has any matter to settle, let him go to them." Moses then went up the mountain. Cloud covered the mountain. The glory of Yahweh rested on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. On the 7th day Yahweh called to Moses from inside the cloud. To the watching Israelites, the glory of Yahweh looked like a devouring fire on the mountain top. Moses went right into the cloud and went on up the mountain. Moses stayed on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. Exodus chapter 25. Yahweh spoke to Moses and said, "Tell the Israelites to set aside a contribution for me. You will accept a contribution from everyone whose heart prompts him to give it. And this is what you will accept from them: gold, silver, and bronze, materials dyed violet purple, red purple, and crimson, fine linen, goat's hair, ram skins dyed red, fine leather, acacia wood, oil for the light, spices for the anointing oil and fragrant incense, cornelian and other stones to be set in the ephod and breastplate. Make me a sanctuary so that I can reside among them. You will make it all according to the design for the dwelling and the design for its furnishings, which I shall now show you. You must make me an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. You will overlay it, inside and out, with pure gold, and make a gold molding all round it. You will cast 4 gold rings for it and fix them to its 4 supports, 2 rings on one side and 2 rings on the other. You will also make shafts of acacia wood and overlay them with gold, and pass the shafts through the rings on the sides of the ark, by which to carry it. The shafts will stay in the rings of the ark and not be withdrawn. Inside the ark you will put the testimony which I am about to give you. You will also make a mercy seat of pure gold, 2.5 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide, and you will model 2 great winged creatures of beaten gold. You will make them at the 2 ends of the mercy seat. Model one of the winged creatures at one end and the other winged creature at the other end. You will model the winged creatures of a piece with the mercy seat at either end. The winged creatures must have their wings spread upwards, protecting the mercy seat with their wings and facing each other, their faces being towards the mercy seat. You will put the mercy seat on the top of the ark, and inside the ark you will put the testimony which I am about to give you. There I shall come to meet you, from above the mercy seat, from between the 2 winged creatures which are on the ark of the testimony. I shall give you all my orders for the Israelites. You must also make a table of acacia wood, 2 cubits long, 1 cubit wide, and 1.5 cubits high. You will overlay it with pure gold, and make a gold molding all round it. You will fit it with struts of a hand's breadth and make a gold molding round the struts. You will make 4 gold rings for it and fix the 4 rings at the 4 corners where the 4 legs are. The rings must lie close to the struts to hold the shafts for carrying the table. You must make the shafts of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. The table must be carried by these. You must make dishes, cups, jars and libation bowls for it. You must make these of pure gold, and on the table, in my presence, you will always put the loaves of permanent offering. You will also make a lampstand of pure gold. The lampstand must be of beaten gold, base and stem. Its cups, calyxes and petals must be of a piece with it. 6 branches must spring from its sides. 3 of the lampstand's branches from one side, 3 of the lampstand's branches from the other. The first branch must carry 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with its calyx and petals. The second branch, too, must carry 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with its calyx and bud, and similarly for all 6 branches springing from the lampstand. The lampstand itself must carry 4 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with its calyx and bud, 1 calyx under the first 2 branches springing from the lampstand, 1 calyx under the next pair of branches and 1 calyx under the last pair of branches, thus for all 6 branches springing from the lampstand. The calyxes and the branches will be of a piece with the lampstand, and the whole made from a single piece of pure gold, beaten out. You will also make 7 lamps for it and mount the lamps in such a way that they light up the space in front of it. The snuffers and trays must be of pure gold. You will use a talent of pure gold for the lampstand and all its accessories, and see that you work to the design which was shown you on the mountain. Exodus, chapter 26. The dwelling itself you will make with 10 sheets of finely woven linen dyed violet purple, red purple and crimson. You will have them embroidered with great winged creatures. The length of a single sheet is to be 28 cubits, its width 4 cubits, all the sheets to be of the same size. 5 of the sheets are to be joined to one another, and the other 5 sheets are to be joined to one another. You will make violet loops along the edge of the first sheet, at the end of the set, and do the same along the edge of the last sheet in the other set. You will make 50 loops on the first sheet and 50 loops along the outer edge of the sheet of the second set, the loops corresponding to one another. You will also make 50 gold clasps, and join the sheets together with the clasps. In this way the dwelling will be a unified whole. You will make sheets of goat's hair to form a tent over the dwelling. You will make 11 of these. The length of a single sheet must be 30 cubits and its width 4 cubits, the 11 sheets to be all of the same size. You will join 5 sheets together into one set, and 6 sheets into another. The 6th you will fold double over the front of the tent. You will make 50 loops along the edge of the first sheet, at the end of the first set, and 50 loops along the edge of the sheet of the second set. You will make 50 bronze clasps and insert the clasps into the loops, to draw the tent together and to make it a unified whole. Of the extra part of the sheets that overlap, half is to hang down the back of the dwelling. The extra cubit on either side along the length of the tent sheets must hang down the sides of the dwelling on either side to cover it. And for the tent you will make a cover of ram skins dyed red and a cover of fine leather over that. For the dwelling you will make vertical frames of acacia wood. Each frame must be 10 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide. Each frame must have twin tenons. That is how all the frames for the dwelling must be made. You will make frames for the dwelling, 20 frames for the south side, to the south, and make 40 silver sockets under the 20 frames, 2 sockets under one frame for its 2 tenons, 2 sockets under the next frame for its 2 tenons. And for the other side of the dwelling, the north side, 20 frames and 40 silver sockets, 2 sockets under one frame, 2 sockets under the next frame. For the back of the dwelling on the west, you will make 6 frames, and make 2 frames for the corners at the back of the dwelling. These must be coupled together at the bottom, and right up to the top, to the level of the first ring. This for the 2 frames that must form the 2 corners. Thus there will be 8 frames with their silver sockets, 16 sockets, 2 sockets under one frame and 2 sockets under the next frame. You will make crossbars of acacia wood, 5 for the frames of the first side of the dwelling, 5 crossbars for the frames of the opposite side of the dwelling, and 5 crossbars for the frames which form the back of the dwelling, to the west. The middle bar must join the frames from one end to the other, halfway up. You will overlay the frames with gold, make gold rings for them, through which to place the crossbars, and overlay the crossbars with gold. This is how you must erect the dwelling, following the design shown you on the mountain. You will make a curtain of finely woven linen, dyed violet purple, red purple and crimson, and embroidered with great winged creatures, and put it on 4 poles of acacia wood overlaid with golden hooks for them, set in 4 sockets of silver. You will put the curtain below the clasps, so that inside behind the curtain, you can place the Ark of the Testimony, and the curtain will mark the division for you between the holy place and the Holy of Holies. You will put the mercy seat on the Ark of the Testimony in the Holy of Holies. You will place the table outside the curtain, and the lampstand on the south side of the dwelling, opposite the table. You will put the table on the north side. For the entrance to the tent you will make a screen of finely woven linen embroidered with violet purple, red purple and crimson, and for the screen you will make 5 poles of acacia wood and overlay them with golden hooks, and for them you will cast 5 sockets of bronze. Exodus chapter 27. You will make the altar of acacia wood, 5 cubits long and 5 cubits wide. The altar will be square and 3 cubits high. At its 4 corners you will make horns. The horns must be of a piece with it, and you will overlay it with bronze. And for it you will make pans for taking away the fatty ashes, and shovels, sprinkling basins, hooks and fire pans. You will make all the altar accessories of bronze. You will also make a grating for it of bronze network, and on the 4 corners of the grating you will make 4 bronze rings. You will put it below the ledge of the altar, underneath, so that it comes halfway up the altar. You will make shafts for the altar, shafts of acacia wood, and overlay them with bronze. The shafts will be passed through the rings in such a way that the shafts are on either side of the altar, for carrying it. You will make the altar hollow, out of boards. You will make it as you were shown on the mountain. Then you will make the court of the dwelling. On the south side, the curtaining of the court must be of finely woven linen, 100 cubits long for the first side, its 20 poles and their 20 sockets being of bronze, and the poles hooks and rods of silver. So too for the north side, there must be 100 cubits of curtaining, its 20 poles and their 20 sockets being of bronze, and the poles hooks and rods of silver. Across the width of the court on the west side, there must be 50 cubits of curtaining, with its 10 poles and their 10 sockets. The width of the court on the east side, facing the sunrise, must be 50 cubits, with 15 cubits of curtaining on one side of the entrance, with its 3 poles and their 3 sockets, and on the other side of the entrance, 15 cubits of curtaining, with its 3 poles and their 3 sockets. And for the gateway to the court there must be a 20-cubit screen of finely woven linen embroidered with violet purple, red purple and crimson, with its 4 poles and their 4 sockets. All the poles round the court must be connected by silver rods. Their hooks must be of silver and their sockets of bronze. The length of the court must be 100 cubits, its width 50 cubits and its height 5 cubits. All the curtaining must be made of finely woven linen, and their sockets of bronze. All the accessories for general use in the dwelling, all its pegs and all the pegs of the court, must be of bronze. You will order the Israelites to bring you pure pounded olive oil for the light, and to keep a lamp burning all the time. Aaron and his sons will tend it in the tent of meeting, outside the curtain hanging in front of the testimony, from dusk to dawn, before Yahweh. This is a perpetual decree for all generations of Israelites. Exodus chapter 28. From among the Israelites, summon your brother Aaron and his sons to be priests in my service. Aaron and Aaron's sons Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar and Ithamar. For your brother Aaron you will make sacred vestments to give dignity and magnificence. You will instruct all the skilled men, whom I have endowed with skill, to make Aaron's vestments for his consecration to my priesthood. These are the vestments which they must make: a pectoral, an ephod, a robe, an embroidered tunic, a turban and a belt. They must make sacred vestments for your brother Aaron and his sons, for them to be priests in my service. They will use gold and violet material, red, purple, and crimson, and finely woven linen. They will make the ephod of finely woven linen embroidered with gold, violet, purple, red, purple, and crimson. It will have 2 shoulder straps joined to it. It will be joined to them by its 2 edges. The waistband on the ephod to hold it in position must be of the same workmanship and be of a piece with it, of gold, violet, purple, red, purple, and crimson materials and finely woven linen. You will then take 2 cornelians and engrave them with the names of the sons of Israel, 6 of their names on one stone, the remaining 6 names on the other, in the order of their birth. By the stone carver's art, seal engraving, you will engrave the 2 stones with the names of the sons of Israel. You will have them mounted in gold settings and will put the 2 stones on the shoulder straps of the ephod, to commemorate the sons of Israel. In this way Aaron will bear their names on his 2 shoulders, before Yahweh, as a reminder. You will also make golden rosettes, and 2 chains of pure gold twisted like cord, and will attach the cord-like chains to the rosettes. You will make the breastplate of judgment of the same embroidered work as the ephod. You will make it of gold, violet, purple, red, purple, and crimson materials and finely woven linen. It must be square and doubled over, a span in length and a span in width. In it you will set 4 rows of stones, a sard, topaz, and emerald for the first row. For the second row, a garnet, sapphire, and diamond. For the third row, a hyacinth, a ruby, and an amethyst. And for the fourth row, a beryl, a cornelian, and a jasper. These must be mounted in gold settings. The stones will correspond to the names of the sons of Israel, 12 like their names, engraved like seals, each with the name of one of the 12 tribes. For the breastplate you will make chains of pure gold twisted like cords, and on the breastplate you will make 2 gold rings, putting the 2 rings on the 2 outside edges of the breastplate and fastening the 2 gold cords to the 2 rings on the outside edges of the breastplate. The other 2 ends of the cords you will fasten to the 2 rosettes, putting these on the shoulder straps of the ephod, on the front. You will also make 2 gold rings and put them on the 2 edges of the breastplate, on the inner side, against the ephod. And you will make 2 gold rings and put them low down on the front of the 2 shoulder pieces of the ephod, close to the join, above the waistband of the ephod. The breastplate will be secured by a violet-purple cord passed through its rings and those of the ephod, so that the breastplate will sit above the waistband and not come apart from the ephod. Thus Aaron will bear the names of the sons of Israel on the breastplate of judgment, on his heart, when he enters the sanctuary, as a reminder, before Yahweh, always. To the breastplate of judgment you will add the Urim and the Thummim, and these will be on Aaron's heart when he goes into Yahweh's presence, and Aaron will bear the Israelites' judgment on his heart, in Yahweh's presence, always. You will make the robe of the ephod entirely of violet purple. In the center it will have an opening for the head, the opening to have rounded a border woven like the neck of a coat of mail, so that it will not get torn. On its lower hem, you will make pomegranates of violet purple, red, purple, and crimson, and finely woven linen all round the hem, with golden bells between them all round. A golden bell and then a pomegranate, alternately, all round the lower hem of the robe. Aaron must wear it when he officiates, and the tinkling will be heard when he goes into the sanctuary into Yahweh's presence, or leaves it, and so he will not incur death. You will make a flower of pure gold, and on it, as you would engrave a seal, you will engrave, consecrated to Yahweh. You will put it on a violet-purple cord. It will go on the turban. The front of the turban is the place where it must go. This will go on Aaron's brow, and Aaron will thus take on himself the shortcomings and the holy things consecrated by the Israelites in all their holy offerings. It will be on his brow permanently, to make them acceptable to Yahweh. The tunic you will weave of fine linen, and make a turban of fine linen, and an embroidered waistband. For the sons of Aaron you will make tunics and waistbands. You will also make them headdresses to give dignity and magnificence. You will dress your brother Aaron and his sons in these. You will then anoint them, invest them and consecrate them to serve me in the priesthood. You will also make them linen breeches reaching from waist to thigh, to cover their bare flesh. Aaron and his sons will wear these when they go into the tent of meeting and when they approach the altar to serve in the sanctuary, as a precaution against incurring mortal guilt. This is a perpetual decree for Aaron and for his descendants after him. Exodus, chapter 29. This is what you will do to them, to consecrate them to my priesthood. Take 1 young bull and 2 rams without blemish, also unleavened bread, unleavened cakes mixed with oil, and unleavened wafers spread with oil, made from fine wheat flour, and put these into a basket and present them in the basket, at the same time as the bull and the 2 rams. You will bring Aaron and his sons to the entrance of the tent of meeting and bathe them. You will then take the vestments and dress Aaron in the tunic, the robe of the ephod, and the breastplate, and tie the waistband of the ephod round his waist. Then you will place the turban on his head, and on it put the symbol of holy consecration. You will then take the anointing oil and pour it on his head and so anoint him. Next, you will bring his sons and dress them in tunics, and fasten waistbands round their waists and put the headdresses on their heads. By perpetual decree the priesthood will be theirs. Then you will invest Aaron and his sons. You will bring the bull in front of the tent of meeting, and Aaron and his sons will lay their hands on the bull's head. You will then slaughter the bull before Yahweh at the entrance to the tent of meeting. You will then take some of the bull's blood and with your finger put it on the horns of the altar. Next, pour out the rest of the blood at the foot of the altar, and then take all the fat covering the entrails, the fatty mass over the liver, the 2 kidneys with their covering fat, and burn them on the altar. But the young bull's flesh, its skin and its offal, you will burn outside the camp, for this is a sin offering. Next, you will take one of the rams, and Aaron and his sons will lay their hands on the ram's head. You will then slaughter the ram, take its blood and pour it against the altar, all round. Next, cut the ram into quarters, wash the entrails and legs and put them on the quarters and head. Then burn the whole ram on the altar. This will be a burnt offering for Yahweh, a pleasing smell, a food offering burnt for Yahweh. Next, you will take the other ram, and Aaron and his sons will lay their hands on the ram's head. You will then slaughter the ram, take some of its blood and put it on the lobe of Aaron's right ear, on the lobes of his sons' right ears, the thumbs of their right hands, and the big toes of their right feet, and pour the rest of the blood against the altar, all round. You will then take some of the blood on the altar and some of the anointing oil, and sprinkle it on Aaron and his vestments and on his sons' vestments, so that he and his vestments will be consecrated and his sons too, and his sons' vestments. You will then take the fatty parts of the ram, the tail, the fat covering the entrails, the fatty mass over the liver, the 2 kidneys with their covering fat and also the right thigh, for this is a ram of investiture, and a loaf of bread, a cake of bread made with oil, and a wafer, from the basket of unleavened bread before Yahweh, and put it all on the palms of Aaron and his sons, and make the gesture of offering before Yahweh. Then you will take them back and burn them on the altar, on top of the burnt offering, as a smell pleasing before Yahweh, a food offering burnt for Yahweh. You will then take the 4 quarters of the ram of Aaron's investiture and with it make the gesture of offering before Yahweh. This will be your portion. You will consecrate the 4 quarters that have been thus offered, as also the thigh that is set aside, what has been offered and what has been set aside from the ram of investiture of Aaron and his sons. This, by perpetual decree, will be the portion that Aaron and his sons will receive from the Israelites, since it is the portion set aside for Yahweh by the Israelites from their communion sacrifices, a portion set aside for Yahweh. Aaron's sacred vestments must pass to his sons after him, and they will wear them for their anointing and investiture. Whichever of the sons of Aaron succeeds him in the priesthood and enters the tent of meeting to serve in the sanctuary will wear them for 7 days. You will take the ram of investiture and cook its meat in a holy place. Aaron and his sons will eat the meat of the ram and the bread which is in the basket at the entrance to the tent of meeting. They will eat what was used in making expiation for them at their investiture and consecration. No unauthorized person may eat these. They are holy things. If any of the meat from the investiture sacrifice, or the bread, should be left till morning, you will burn what is left. It may not be eaten. It is a holy thing. This is what you will do for Aaron and his sons, implementing all the orders I have given you. You will take 7 days over their investiture. On each of the days you will also offer a young bull as a sacrifice for sin, in expiation. You will offer a sin sacrifice for the altar when you make expiation for it. Then you will consecrate it by anointing it. For 7 days you will make expiation for the altar. Then you will consecrate it. It will then be especially holy, and whatever touches the altar will become holy. This is what you must offer on the altar: 2 yearling male lambs each day in perpetuity. The first lamb you will offer at dawn, and the second at twilight. And with the first lamb, 1/10 of a measure of fine flour mixed with 1/4 of a hin of pounded olive oil, and, for a libation, 1/4 of a hin of wine. The second lamb you will offer at twilight, and do it with a similar cereal offering and libation as at dawn, as a pleasing smell, as an offering burnt for Yahweh, a perpetual burnt offering for all your generations to come, at the entrance to the tent of meeting before Yahweh, where I shall meet you and speak to you. There I shall meet the Israelites in the place consecrated by my glory. I shall consecrate the tent of meeting and the altar. I shall also consecrate Aaron and his sons, to be priests in my service. And I shall live with the Israelites and be their God. And they will know that I am Yahweh their God, who brought them out of Egypt to live among them. I, Yahweh their God. Exodus chapter 30. You will make an altar on which to burn incense. You will make it of acacia wood, 1 cubit long, and 1 cubit wide. It must be square, and 2 cubits high. Its horns must be of a piece with it. You will overlay its top, its sides all round, and its horns with pure gold, and make a gold molding to go all round. You will make 2 gold rings for it below the molding on its 2 opposite sides, to take the shafts used for carrying it. You will make the shafts of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. You will put it in front of the curtain by the ark of testimony, in front of the mercy seat which is on the testimony, where I shall meet you. On it Aaron will burn fragrant incense each morning. When he trims the lamps, he will burn incense on it. And when Aaron puts back the lamps at twilight, he will burn incense on it. Incense perpetually before Yahweh for all your generations to come. You will not offer unauthorized incense, or burnt offering, or cereal offering on it. And you will not pour any libation over it. Once a year, Aaron will perform the rite of expiation on the horns of the altar. Once a year, on the day of expiation, with the blood of the sacrifice for sin, he will make expiation for himself, for all your generations to come. It is especially holy for Yahweh. Yahweh then spoke to Moses and said, When you count the Israelites by census, each one of them must pay Yahweh a ransom for his life, to avoid any incidents of plague among them while you are holding the census. Everyone subject to the census will pay half a shekel, reckoning by the sanctuary shekel, 20 gerah to the shekel. This half shekel will be set aside for Yahweh. Everyone subject to the census, that is to say of 20 years and over, will pay the sum set aside for Yahweh. The rich man must not give more, nor the poor man less, than half a shekel when he pays the sum set aside for Yahweh in ransom for your lives. You will take the ransom money of the Israelites and apply it to the service of the tent of meeting, for it to be a reminder of the Israelites before Yahweh, as the ransom for your lives. Yahweh then spoke to Moses and said, You will also make a bronze basin on its bronze stand, for washing. You will put it between the tent of meeting and the altar and put water in it, in which Aaron and his sons will wash their hands and feet. Whenever they are to enter the tent of meeting, they will wash, to avoid incurring death. And whenever they approach the altar for their service, to burn an offering for Yahweh, they will wash their hands and feet, to avoid incurring death. This is a perpetual decree for him and his descendants for all their generations to come. Yahweh spoke further to Moses and said, Take the finest spices, 500 shekels of fresh myrrh, half as much, 250 shekels, of fragrant cinnamon, 250 shekels of scented reed, 500 shekels, reckoning by the sanctuary shekel, of cassia, and 1 hin of olive oil. You will make this into a holy anointing oil, such a blend as the perfumer might make. This will be a holy anointing oil. With it you will anoint the tent of meeting and the ark of the testimony, the table and all its accessories, the lampstand and its accessories, the altar of incense, the altar of burnt offerings and all its accessories, and the basin with its stand, consecrating them, so that they will be especially holy, and whatever touches them will become holy. You will also anoint Aaron and his sons and consecrate them to be priests in my service. You will then speak to the Israelites and say, This anointing oil will be holy for you for all your generations to come. It must not be used for anointing the human body, nor may you make any of the same mixture. It is a holy thing. You will regard it as holy. Anyone who makes up the same oil or uses it on an unauthorized person will be outlawed from his people. Yahweh then said to Moses, Take sweet spices, storax, onycha, galbanum, sweet spices and pure frankincense in equal parts, and compound an incense, such a blend as the perfumer might make, salted, pure, and holy. You will grind some of this up very fine and put it in front of the testimony in the tent of meeting, where I shall meet you. You will regard it as especially holy. You may not make any incense of similar composition for your own use. You will regard it as holy, reserved for Yahweh. Anyone who makes up the same thing to use as perfume will be outlawed from his people. Exodus chapter 31. Yahweh then spoke to Moses and said, Look, I have singled out Bezalel son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and have filled him with the Spirit of God and wisdom, knowledge and skill in every kind of craft, in designing and carrying out work in gold and silver and bronze, in cutting stones to be set, in wood carving and in executing every kind of work. And to help him I have given him Oholiab son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, and have endowed the hearts of all the skilled men with the skill to make everything I have ordered you, the tent of meeting, the ark of the testimony, the mercy seat above it, and all the furniture of the tent, the table and all its accessories, the pure lampstand and all its equipment, the altar of incense, the altar of burnt offerings and all its accessories, the basin and its stand, the liturgical vestments, the sacred vestments for Aaron the priest, and the vestments for his sons, for their priestly functions, the anointing oil and the fragrant incense for the sanctuary. They will do everything as I have ordered you. Yahweh then said to Moses, Speak to the Israelites and say, You will keep my Sabbaths properly, for this is a sign between myself and you for all your generations to come, so that you will know that it is I, Yahweh, who sanctify you. You will keep the Sabbath, then. You will regard it as holy. Anyone who profanes it will be put to death. Anyone who does any work on that day will be outlawed from his people. Work must be done for 6 days, but the 7th day will be a day of complete rest, consecrated to Yahweh. Anyone who works on the Sabbath day will be put to death. The Israelites will keep the Sabbath, observing the Sabbath for all their generations to come. This is an eternal covenant between myself and the Israelites. This is a sign forever. For in 6 days Yahweh made heaven and earth, but on the 7th day he rested and drew breath. When he had finished speaking to Moses on Mount Sinai, he gave him the 2 tablets of the testimony, tablets of stone inscribed by the finger of God. Exodus chapter 32. When the people saw that Moses was a long time before coming down the mountain, they gathered round Aaron and said to him, Get to work, make us a god to go at our head. For that Moses, the man who brought us here from Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." Aaron replied, "Strip off the gold rings in the ears of your wives and your sons and daughters, and bring them to me." The people all stripped off the gold rings from their ears and brought them to Aaron. He received what they gave him, melted it down in a mold, and with it made the statue of a calf. "Israel," the people shouted, "here is your God who brought you here from Egypt." Observing this, Aaron built an altar before the statue and made this proclamation, "Tomorrow will be a feast in Yahweh's honor." Early next morning they sacrificed burnt offerings and brought communion sacrifices. The people then sat down to eat and drink, and afterwards got up to amuse themselves. Yahweh then said to Moses, "Go down at once, for your people whom you brought here from Egypt have become corrupt. They have quickly left the way which I ordered them to follow. They have cast themselves a metal calf, worshipped it and offered sacrifice to it, shouting, 'Israel, here is your God who brought you here from Egypt.'" Yahweh then said to Moses, "I know these people. I know how obstinate they are. So leave me now, so that my anger can blaze at them and I can put an end to them. I shall make a great nation out of you instead." Moses tried to pacify Yahweh his God. "Yahweh," he said, "why should your anger blaze at your people, whom you have brought out of Egypt by your great power and mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say, 'He brought them out with evil intention, to slaughter them in the mountains and wipe them off the face of the earth'? Give up your burning wrath. Relent over this disaster intended for your people. Remember your servants Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to whom you swore by your very self and made this promise. I shall make your offspring as numerous as the stars of heaven, and this whole country of which I have spoken, I shall give to your descendants, and it will be their heritage forever." Yahweh then relented over the disaster which he had intended to inflict on his people. Moses turned and came down the mountain with the 2 tablets of the testimony in his hands, tablets inscribed on both sides, inscribed on the front and on the back. The tablets were the work of God, and the writing on them was God's writing, engraved on the tablets. When Joshua heard the noise of the people shouting, he said to Moses, "There is the sound of battle in the camp." But he replied, "No song of victory is this sound, no lament for defeat this sound, but answering choruses I hear." And there, as he approached the camp, he saw the calf and the groups dancing. Moses blazed with anger. He threw down the tablets he was holding, shattering them at the foot of the mountain. He seized the calf they had made and burned it, grinding it into powder which he scattered on the water, and made the Israelites drink it. Moses then said to Aaron, "What have these people done to you for you to have brought so great a sin on them?" Aaron replied, "My Lord should not be so angry. You yourself know what a bad state these people are in. They said to me, 'Make us a god to go at our head.' For that Moses, the man who brought us here from Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." I then said to them, "Anyone with gold, strip it off." They gave it to me. I threw it into the fire, and out came this calf. When Moses saw that the people were out of hand, for Aaron had let them get out of hand to the derision of their enemies all round them, Moses then stood at the gate of the camp and shouted, "Who is for Yahweh? To me!" And all the Levites rallied round him. He said to them, "Yahweh, God of Israel, says this, Buckle on your sword, each of you, and go up and down the camp from gate to gate, every man of you slaughtering brother, friend, and neighbor." The Levites did as Moses said, and of the people about 3,000 men perished that day. "Today," Moses said, "you have consecrated yourselves to Yahweh, one at the cost of his son, another of his brother. And so he bestows a blessing on you today." On the following day Moses said to the people, "You have committed a great sin. But now I shall go up to Yahweh. Perhaps I can secure expiation for your sin." Moses then went back to Yahweh and said, "Oh, this people has committed a great sin by making themselves a god of gold. And yet, if it pleased you to forgive their sin. If not, please blot me out of the book you have written." Yahweh said to Moses, Those who have sinned against me are the ones I shall blot out of my book. So now go and lead the people to the place I promised to you. My angel will indeed go at your head, but on the day of punishment, I shall punish them for their sin." And Yahweh punished the people for having made the calf, the one Aaron had made. Exodus chapter 33. Yahweh then said to Moses, "Leave, move on from here, you and the people whom you have brought here from Egypt, to the country that I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that I would give to their descendants. I shall send an angel in front of you and drive out the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Move on towards a country flowing with milk and honey, but I myself shall not be going with you, or I might annihilate you on the way, for you are an obstinate people." On hearing these stern words the people went into mourning, and no one wore his ornaments. Yahweh then said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites, 'You are an obstinate people. If I were to go with you even for a moment, I should annihilate you. So now take off your ornaments, and then I shall decide how to deal with you.'" So, from Mount Horeb onwards, the Israelites stripped themselves of their ornaments. Moses used to take the tent and pitch it outside the camp, far away from the camp. He called it the tent of meeting. Anyone who wanted to consult Yahweh would go out to the tent of meeting, outside the camp. Whenever Moses went out to the tent, the people would all stand up, and every man would stand at the door of his tent and watch Moses until he went into the tent. And whenever Moses went into the tent, the pillar of cloud would come down and station itself at the entrance to the tent, while Yahweh spoke with Moses. The people could all see the pillar of cloud stationed at the entrance to the tent, and the people would all stand up and bow low, each at the door of his tent. Yahweh would talk to Moses face to face, as a man talks to his friend, and afterwards he would come back to the camp. But the young man who was his servant, Joshua son of Nun, never left the inside of the tent. Moses said to Yahweh, "Look, you say to me, 'Make the people move on,' but you have not told me whom you are going to send with me, although you have said, 'I know you by name and you enjoy my favor.' If indeed I enjoy your favor, please show me your ways, so that I understand you and continue to enjoy your favor. Consider too that this nation is your people." Yahweh then said, "I myself shall go with you, and I shall give you rest." To which he said, "If you do not come yourself, do not make us move on from here. For how can it be known that I and my people enjoy your favor, if not by your coming with us? By this we shall be marked out, I and your people, from all the peoples on the face of the earth." Yahweh then said to Moses, "Again I shall do what you have asked, because you enjoy my favor and because I know you by name." He then said, "Please show me your glory." Yahweh said, "I shall make all my goodness pass before you, and before you I shall pronounce the name Yahweh. And I am gracious to those to whom I am gracious, and I take pity on those on whom I take pity. But my face," he said, "you cannot see, for no human being can see me and survive." Then Yahweh said, "Here is a place near me. You will stand on the rock, and when my glory passes by, I shall put you in a cleft of the rock and shield you with my hand until I have gone past. Then I shall take my hand away, and you will see my back, but my face will not be seen." Exodus chapter 34. Yahweh said to Moses, "Cut 2 tablets of stone like the first ones and come up to me on the mountain, and I will write on the tablets the words that were on the first tablets, which you broke. Be ready at dawn. At dawn come up Mount Sinai and wait for me there at the top of the mountain. No one may come up with you. No one may be seen anywhere on the mountain. The flocks and herds may not even graze in front of this mountain." So he cut 2 tablets of stone like the first, and, with the 2 tablets of stone in his hands, Moses went up Mount Sinai in the early morning as Yahweh had ordered. And Yahweh descended in a cloud and stood with him there and pronounced the name Yahweh. Then Yahweh passed before him and called out, "Yahweh, Yahweh, God of tenderness and compassion, slow to anger, rich in faithful love and constancy, maintaining his faithful love to thousands, forgiving fault, crime and sin, yet letting nothing go unchecked, and punishing the parents' fault in the children and in the grandchildren to the third and fourth generation. Moses immediately bowed to the ground in worship. Then he said, "If indeed I do enjoy your favor, please, my Lord, come with us, although they are an obstinate people, and forgive our faults and sins, and adopt us as your heritage." He then said, "Look, I am now making a covenant. I shall work such wonders at the head of your whole people as have never been worked in any other country or nation, and all the people round you will see what Yahweh can do, for what I shall do through you will be awe-inspiring. Mark, then, what I command you today. I am going to drive out the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites before you. Take care you make no pact with the inhabitants of the country which you are about to enter, or they will prove a snare in your community. You will tear down their altars, smash their cultic stones, and cut down their sacred poles. For you will worship no other God, since Yahweh's name is the Jealous One. He is a jealous God. Make no pact with the inhabitants of the country, or, when they prostitute themselves to their own gods and sacrifice to them, they will invite you and you will partake of their sacrifice, and then you will choose wives for your sons from among their daughters, and their daughters, prostituting themselves to their own gods, will induce your sons to prostitute themselves to their gods. You will not cast metal gods for yourself. You will observe the feast of unleavened bread. For 7 days you will eat unleavened bread, as I have commanded you, at the appointed time in the month of Abib. For in the month of Abib you came out of Egypt. All that first issues from the womb belongs to me. Every male, every firstborn of flock or herd. But the firstborn donkey you will redeem with an animal from the flock. If you do not redeem it, you must break its neck. All the firstborn of your sons you will redeem, and no one will appear before me empty-handed. For 6 days you will labor, but on the 7th day you will rest. You will stop work even during plowing and harvesting. You will observe the Feast of Weeks, of the firstfruits of the wheat harvest, and the Feast of Ingathering at the close of the year. 3 times a year all your menfolk will appear before Lord Yahweh, God of Israel. For I shall dispossess the nations before you and extend your frontiers, and no one will set his heart on your territory when you go away to appear before Yahweh your God 3 times a year. You will not offer the blood of my sacrificial victim with leavened bread, nor is the victim offered at the feast of Passover to be left until the following day. You will bring the best of the firstfruits of your soil to the house of Yahweh your God. You will not boil a kid in its mother's milk. Yahweh then said to Moses, "Put these words in writing, for they are the terms of the covenant which I have made with you and with Israel." He stayed there with Yahweh for 40 days and 40 nights, eating and drinking nothing, and on the tablets he wrote the words of the covenant, the 10 words. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets of the testimony in his hands, as he was coming down the mountain, Moses did not know that the skin of his face was radiant because he had been talking to him. And when Aaron and all the Israelites saw Moses, the skin on his face was so radiant that they were afraid to go near him. But Moses called to them, and Aaron and all the leaders of the community rejoined him, and Moses talked to them, after which all the Israelites came closer, and he passed on to them all the orders that Yahweh had given to him on Mount Sinai. Once Moses had finished speaking to them, he put a veil over his face. Whenever Moses went into Yahweh's presence to speak with him, he took the veil off until he came out. And when he came out, he would tell the Israelites what orders he had been given, and the Israelites would see Moses' face radiant. Then Moses would put the veil back over his face until he went in to speak to him next time. Exodus chapter 35. Moses assembled the whole community of Israelites and said, "These are the things Yahweh has ordered to be done. Work must be done for 6 days, but the 7th must be a holy day for you, a day of complete rest, in honor of Yahweh. Anyone who does any work on that day will be put to death. You will not light a fire on the Sabbath day in any of your homes." Moses spoke to the whole community of Israelites. "This," he said, "is what Yahweh has ordered. Set aside a contribution for Yahweh out of your possessions. Everyone whose heart prompts him to do so should bring a contribution for Yahweh: gold, silver and bronze, materials dyed violet purple, red purple and crimson, finely woven linen, goat's hair, ram skins dyed red, fine leather, acacia wood, oil for the light, spices for the anointing oil and for the fragrant incense, cornelian and other stones to be set in the ephod and breastplate. And all those of you who have the skill must come and make everything that Yahweh has ordered: the dwelling, its tent and its covering, its clasps and its frames, its crossbars, its pillars and its sockets, the ark, its shafts and all its accessories, the mercy seat and the screening curtain, the table, its shafts and all its accessories, and the loaves of permanent offering, the lampstand for the light, its accessories, its lamps, and the oil for the light, the altar of incense and its shafts, the anointing oil, the fragrant incense, and the screen for the entrance of the tent, the altar of burnt offerings and its bronze grating, its shafts, and all its accessories, the basin and its stand, the curtaining for the court, its poles, its sockets, and the screen for the entrance to the court, the pegs for the dwelling and the pegs for the court, and their cords, the liturgical vestments for service in the sanctuary, the sacred vestments for Aaron the priest, and the vestments for his sons, for their priestly functions. The whole community of Israelites then withdrew from Moses' presence. And all those whose hearts stirred them and all those whose spirit prompted them brought a contribution for Yahweh, for the work on the tent of meeting, for its general service and for the sacred vestments. Men and women, they came, all those whose heart prompted them, bringing brooches, rings, bracelets, necklaces, golden objects of every kind. All those who had vowed gold to Yahweh, while all those who happened to own violet purple, red purple or crimson materials, finely woven linen, goat's hair, ram skins dyed red, or fine leather, brought that. All those offering a contribution of silver or bronze brought their contribution for Yahweh, and all who happened to own acacia wood, suitable for any of the work to be done, brought that. All the skilled women set their hands to spinning, and brought what they had spun: violet purple, red purple or crimson materials, and fine linen, while all those women whose hearts stirred them by virtue of their skill spun goat's hair. The leaders brought cornelians and other stones to be set in the ephod and breastplate, and the spices and oil for the light, for the anointing oil and for the fragrant incense. All those Israelites, men and women, whose heart prompted them to contribute to the entire work that Yahweh had ordered through Moses to be done, brought a contribution to Yahweh. Moses then said to the Israelites, "Look, Yahweh has singled out Bezalel son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and has filled him with the Spirit of God and wisdom, knowledge and skill in every kind of craft, in designing and carrying out work in gold and silver and bronze, in cutting stones to be set, in wood carving and in executing every kind of work. And on him and on Oholiab son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, he has bestowed the gift of teaching, and filled them with a skill to carry out every kind of work, that of the engraver, that of the embroiderer, that of the needleworker in violet purple, red purple and crimson materials and fine linen, that of the weaver, and indeed that of every kind of craftsman and designer." Exodus chapter 36. Bezalel, Oholiab and all the men whom Yahweh has endowed with the skill and knowledge to know how to carry out all the work to be done on the sanctuary, will do exactly as Yahweh has ordered. Moses then summoned Bezalel, Oholiab and all the skilled men whose hearts Yahweh had endowed with skill, all whose hearts stirred them to come forward and do the work. From Moses they received everything that the Israelites had brought as contributions for carrying out the work of building the sanctuary, and, as they went on bringing their offerings every morning, the skilled men who were doing all the work for the sanctuary all left their particular work and said to Moses, "The people are bringing more than is needed for the work Yahweh has ordered to be done." Moses then gave the order, and proclamation was made throughout the camp: "No one, whether man or woman, must do anything more towards contributing for the sanctuary." So the people were prevented from bringing any more, for the material to hand was enough, and more than enough, to complete all the work. All the most skilled of the men doing the work made the dwelling. Moses made it with 10 sheets of finely woven linen, dyed violet purple, red purple and crimson, and embroidered with great winged creatures. The length of a single sheet was 28 cubits, its width 4 cubits, all the sheets being of the same size. He joined 5 of the sheets to one another, and the other 5 sheets to one another. He made violet loops along the edge of the first sheet, at the end of the set, and did the same along the edge of the last sheet in the other set. He made 50 loops on the first sheet and 50 loops along the outer edge of the sheet of the second set, the loops corresponding to one another. He made 50 gold clasps and joined the sheets together with the clasps. In this way the dwelling was a unified whole. Next he made sheets of goat's hair for the tent over the dwelling. He made 11 of these. The length of a single sheet was 30 cubits and its width 4 cubits. The 11 sheets were all of the same size. He joined 5 sheets together into one set and 6 sheets into another. He made 50 loops along the edge of the last sheet of the first set, and 50 loops along the edge of the sheet of the second set. He made 50 bronze clasps, to draw the tent together and make it a unified whole. And for the tent he made a cover of ram skins dyed red, and a cover of fine leather over that. For the dwelling he made vertical frames of acacia wood. Each frame was 10 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide. Each frame had twin tenons. This was how he made all the frames for the dwelling. He made frames for the dwelling, 20 frames for the south side, to the south, and made 40 silver sockets under the 20 frames, 2 sockets under one frame for its 2 tenons, 2 sockets under the next frame for its 2 tenons. And for the other side of the dwelling, the north side, 20 frames and 40 silver sockets, 2 sockets under one frame, 2 sockets under the next frame. For the back of the dwelling, on the west, he made 6 frames. He also made 2 frames for the corners at the back of the dwelling. These were coupled together at the bottom, staying so up to the top, to the level of the first ring. This he did with the 2 frames forming the 2 corners. Thus there were 8 frames with their 16 silver sockets, 2 sockets under each frame. He made crossbars of acacia wood, 5 for the frames of the first side of the dwelling, 5 crossbars for the frames of the other side of the dwelling, and 5 crossbars for the frames which formed the back of the dwelling, to the west. He made the middle bar, to join the frames from one end to the other, halfway up. He overlaid the frames with gold, made gold rings for them, through which to place the crossbars, and overlaid the crossbars with gold. He made a curtain of finely woven linen, dyed violet purple, red purple and crimson, and embroidered with great winged creatures. And for it he made 4 poles of acacia wood, overlaying them with golden hooks for them, for which he cast 4 sockets of silver. For the entrance to the tent he made a screen of finely woven linen embroidered with violet purple, red purple and crimson, as also the 5 columns for it and their hooks. He overlaid their capitals and rods with gold, but their 5 sockets were of bronze. Exodus chapter 37. Bezalel made the ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide and 1.5 cubits high. He overlaid it, inside and out, with pure gold, and made a gold molding all round it. He cast 4 gold rings for it at its 4 supports, 2 rings on one side and 2 rings on the other. He also made shafts of acacia wood and overlaid them with gold, and passed the shafts through the rings on the sides of the ark, by which to carry it. He also made a mercy seat of pure gold, 2.5 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide, and modeled 2 great winged creatures of beaten gold, putting them at the 2 ends of the mercy seat, one winged creature at one end and the other winged creature at the other end, making the winged creatures of a piece with a mercy seat at either end. The winged creatures had their wings spread upwards, protecting the ark with their wings and facing each other, their faces being towards the mercy seat. He made the table of acacia wood, 2 cubits long, 1 cubit wide and 1.5 cubits high, and made a gold molding all round it. He fitted it with struts a hand's breadth wide and made a gold molding round the struts. He cast 4 gold rings for it and fixed the rings at the 4 corners where the 4 legs were. The rings lay close to the struts to hold the shafts for carrying the table. He made the shafts of acacia wood and overlaid them with gold. These were for carrying the table. He made the accessories which were to go on the table, its dishes, cups, jars and libation bowls, of pure gold. He also made the lampstand of pure gold, making the lampstand, base and stem, of beaten gold, its cups, calyxes and bud being of a piece with it. 6 branches sprang from its sides. 3 of the lampstand's branches from one side, 3 of the lampstand's branches from the other. The first branch carried 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with its calyx and bud. The second branch, too, carried 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with its calyx and bud, and similarly all 6 branches springing from the lampstand. The lampstand itself carried 4 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with its calyx and bud, 1 calyx under the first 2 branches springing from the lampstand, 1 calyx under the next pair of branches and 1 calyx under the last pair of branches, thus for all 6 branches springing from the lampstand. The calyxes and the branches were of a piece with the lampstand, and the whole was made from a single piece of pure gold, beaten out. He also made its 7 lamps, its snuffers and trays of pure gold. He made the lampstand and all its accessories from a talent of pure gold. He made the altar of incense of acacia wood, 1 cubit long, and 1 cubit wide. It was square, and 2 cubits high. Its horns were of a piece with it. He overlaid its top, its sides all round, and its horns with pure gold, and made a molding to go all round. He made 2 gold rings for it below the molding on its 2 opposite sides, to take the shafts used for carrying it. He made the shafts of acacia wood and overlaid them with gold. He also made the holy anointing oil and the fragrant incense, blending it as a perfumer would. Exodus chapter 38. He made the altar of burnt offerings of acacia wood, 5 cubits long and 5 cubits wide. It was square and 3 cubits high. At its 4 corners he made horns, the horns being of a piece with it, and overlaid it with bronze. He made all the altar accessories, the ash pans, shovels, sprinkling basins, hooks and fire pans. He made all the altar accessories of bronze. He also made a grating for the altar of bronze network, below its ledge, underneath, coming halfway up. He cast 4 rings for the 4 corners of the bronze grating to take the shafts. He made the shafts of acacia wood and overlaid them with bronze. He passed the shafts through the rings on the sides of the altar for carrying it. He made the altar hollow, out of boards. He made the bronze basin and its bronze stand from the mirrors of the women who served at the entrance to the tent of meeting. He made the court. On the south side, on the south, the curtaining of the court was of finely woven linen 100 cubits long, its 20 poles and their sockets being of bronze, and their hooks and rods of silver. And on the north side, 100 cubits of curtaining, its 20 poles and their 20 sockets being of bronze, and their hooks and rods of silver. On the west side there were 50 cubits of curtaining, with its 10 poles and their 10 sockets, the poles' hooks and rods being of silver. And on the east side, on the east, there were 50 cubits. On the one side there were 15 cubits of curtaining, with its 3 poles and their 3 sockets, and on the other side, either side of the gateway to the court, there were 15 cubits of curtaining with its 3 poles and their 3 sockets. All the curtaining round the court was of finely woven linen. The sockets for the poles were of bronze, the poles' hooks and rods of silver. Their capitals were overlaid with silver, and all the poles of the court had silver rods. The screen for the gateway to the court was of finely woven linen embroidered with violet purple, red purple and crimson, 20 cubits long and 5 cubits high, all the way along, like the curtaining of the court, its 4 poles and their 4 sockets being of bronze, their hooks of silver, their capitals overlaid with silver, and their rods of silver. All the pegs round the dwelling and the court were of bronze. These are the accounts for the dwelling of the testimony, drawn up by order of Moses, the work of Levites, produced by Ithamar son of Aaron, the priest, Bezalel son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, made everything that Yahweh ordered Moses to make, his assistant being Oholiab son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, an engraver, embroiderer and needleworker in violet purple, red purple and crimson materials and fine linen. The amount of gold used for the work, for the entire work for the sanctuary, the gold consecrated for the purpose, was 29 talents and 730 shekels, reckoned by the sanctuary shekel. The silver from the census of the community was 100 talents and 1,775 shekels, reckoned by the sanctuary shekel, 1 beka per head, half a shekel reckoned by the sanctuary shekel, for everyone of 20 years and over included in the census, for 603,550 persons. 100 talents of silver were used for casting the sockets for the sanctuary and the sockets for the curtain. 100 sockets from 100 talents, 1 talent per socket. From the 1,775 shekels, he made the hooks for the poles, overlaid their capitals and made the rods for them. The bronze consecrated for the purpose amounted to 70 talents and 2,400 shekels, and from it he made the sockets for the entrance of the tent of meeting, the bronze altar, its bronze grating and all the altar accessories, the sockets all round the court, the sockets for the gateway to the court, all the pegs for the dwelling and all the pegs round the court. Exodus chapter 39. From the violet purple, red purple and crimson materials, they made the liturgical vestments for service in the sanctuary. They made the sacred vestments for Aaron, as Yahweh had ordered Moses. They made the ephod of gold, of violet purple, red purple and crimson materials and finely woven linen. They beat gold into thin plates and cut these into threads to work into the violet purple, red purple and crimson materials and the fine linen by needlework. For the ephod they made shoulder straps which were joined to it at its 2 edges. The waistband on the ephod to hold it in position was of a piece with it and of the same workmanship, of gold, violet purple, red purple and finely woven linen, as Yahweh had ordered Moses. They worked the cornelians, mounted in gold setting, and engraved, like an engraved seal, with the names of the sons of Israel, and put the stones on the shoulder straps of the ephod, to commemorate the sons of Israel, as Yahweh had ordered Moses. They made the breastplate of the same embroidered work as the ephod, of gold, violet purple, red purple and crimson materials and finely woven linen. It was square and doubled over, a span in length and a span in width. In it they set 4 rows of stones, a sard, a topaz and an emerald, for the first row, for the second row, a garnet, a sapphire and a diamond, for the third row, a hyacinth, a ruby and an amethyst, and for the fourth row, a beryl, a cornelian and a jasper. Mounted in gold settings, the stones corresponding to the names of the sons of Israel, 12 like their names, engraved like seals, each with the name of one of the 12 tribes. For the breastplate they made chains of pure gold twisted like cords, and they made 2 gold rosettes and 2 gold rings, putting the 2 rings on the 2 outside edges of the breastplate and fastening the 2 gold cords to the 2 rings on the outside edges of the breastplate. The other 2 ends of the cords they fastened to the 2 rosettes, putting these on the shoulder straps of the ephod, on the front. They also made 2 gold rings and put them on the 2 outside edges of the breastplate, on the inner side, against the ephod. And they made 2 more gold rings and put them low down on the front of the 2 shoulder straps of the ephod, close to the join, above the waistband of the ephod. They secured the pectoral by a violet-purple cord passed through its rings and those of the ephod, so that the pectoral would sit above the waistband and not come apart from the ephod, as Yahweh had ordered Moses. They made the robe of the ephod woven entirely of violet purple. The opening in the center of the robe was like the neck of a coat of mail. Round the opening was a border, so that it would not get torn. On the lower hem of the robe, they made pomegranates of violet purple, red purple and crimson and finely woven linen, and made bells of pure gold, putting the bells between the pomegranates all round the lower hem of the robe. Alternately, a bell and then a pomegranate, all round the lower hem of the robe of office, as Yahweh had ordered Moses. They made the tunics of finely woven linen for Aaron and his sons, the turban of fine linen, the headdresses of fine linen, the breeches of finely woven linen, the waistbands of finely woven linen embroidered with violet purple, red purple and crimson, as Yahweh had ordered Moses. They also made the flower, the symbol of holy consecration, of pure gold, and on it, like an engraved seal, they engraved, consecrated to Yahweh. They put it on a violet purple cord, to fasten it high up on the turban, as Yahweh had ordered Moses. So all the work for the dwelling, for the tent of meeting, was completed. They had done everything exactly as Yahweh had ordered Moses. They then brought Moses the dwelling, the tent and all its accessories, its clasps, frames, crossbars, poles and sockets, the cover of ram skins dyed red, the cover of fine leather and the screening curtain, the ark of the testimony and its shafts, and the mercy seat, the table, all its accessories and the loaves of permanent offering, the lampstand of pure gold, its lamps, the array of lamps, and all its accessories, and the oil for the light, the golden altar, the anointing oil, the fragrant incense and the screen for the entrance to the tent, the bronze altar and its bronze grating, its shafts and all its accessories, the basin and its stand, the curtaining for the court, its poles, its sockets, and the screen for the gateway to the court, its cords, its pegs and all the accessories for the service of the dwelling, for the tent of meeting, the liturgical vestments for officiating in the sanctuary, the sacred vestments for Aaron the priest, and the vestments for his sons, for the priestly functions. The Israelites had done all the work exactly as Yahweh had ordered Moses. Moses inspected all the work. They had indeed done it as Yahweh had ordered, and Moses blessed them. Exodus chapter 40. Yahweh then spoke to Moses and said, On the first day of the first month, you will erect the dwelling, the tent of meeting, and place the ark of the testimony in it and screen the ark with a curtain. You will then bring in the table and arrange what has to be arranged on it. You will then bring in the lampstand and set up its lamps. You will place the golden altar of incense in front of the ark of the testimony, and place the screen at the entrance to the dwelling. You will place the altar of burnt offerings in front of the entrance to the dwelling, the tent of meeting, and you will place the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar, and fill it with water. You will then set up the surrounding court and hang the screen at the gateway of the court. Then, taking the anointing oil, you will anoint the dwelling and everything inside, consecrating it and all its accessories. It will then be holy. You will then anoint the altar of burnt offerings and all its accessories, consecrating the altar. The altar will then be especially holy. You will then anoint the basin and its stand, and consecrate it. You will then bring Aaron and his sons to the entrance of the tent of meeting, bathe them thoroughly and then dress Aaron in the sacred vestments, and anoint and consecrate him, to serve me in the priesthood. You will then bring his sons, dress them in tunics and anoint them as you anointed their father, to serve me in the priesthood. Their anointing will confer an everlasting priesthood on them for all their generations to come. Moses did this. He did exactly as Yahweh had ordered him. On the first day of the first month in the second year the dwelling was erected. Moses erected the dwelling. He fixed its sockets, set up its frames, put its crossbars in position, and set up its poles. He spread the tent over the dwelling and the covering for the tent over that, as Yahweh had ordered Moses. He took the testimony and put it in the ark, positioned the shafts on the ark and put the mercy seat on top of the ark. He brought the ark into the dwelling and put the screening curtain in place, screening the ark of the testimony, as Yahweh had ordered Moses. He put the table inside the tent of meeting, against the side of the dwelling, on the north, outside the curtain, and on it arranged the loaves before Yahweh, as Yahweh had ordered Moses. He put the lampstand inside the tent of meeting, opposite the table, on the south side of the dwelling, and set up the lamps before Yahweh, as Yahweh had ordered Moses. He put the golden altar inside the tent of meeting, in front of the curtain, and on it burnt fragrant incense, as Yahweh had ordered Moses. He then put the screen at the entrance to the dwelling. He put the altar of burnt offerings at the entrance to the dwelling, to the tent of meeting, and on it offered the burnt offering and cereal offering, as Yahweh had ordered Moses. He put the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar and put water in it for the ablutions, where Moses, Aaron, and his sons washed their hands and feet. Whenever they entered the tent of meeting or approached the altar they washed, as Yahweh had ordered Moses. He then set up the court round the dwelling and the altar and set up the screen at the gateway to the court. Thus Moses completed the work. The cloud then covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of Yahweh filled the dwelling. Moses could not enter the tent of meeting, since the cloud stayed over it and the glory of Yahweh filled the dwelling. At every stage of their journey, whenever the cloud rose from the dwelling, the Israelites would resume their march. If the cloud did not rise, they would not resume their march until the day it did rise. For Yahweh's cloud stayed over the dwelling during the daytime, and there was fire inside the cloud at night, for the whole house of Israel to see, at every stage of their journey.